The winter of 1891 came early to Black Hollow Ridge, and it came mean. Ethan Crow felt it in his bones before the first snow fell, that particular ache that settled deep in old injuries and refused to leave. He stood on the porch of his cabin, miles from anything resembling civilization, and watched the gray sky promise violence. The wind carried the smell of pine and coming ice. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled. Ethan didn't howl back. He'd stopped making noise years ago. 15 years he'd been up here. 15 years since he'd walked away from Black Hollow Ridge with blood on his hands and nothing in his heart. The town thought him dead, and he'd done nothing to correct that assumption. Let them think what they wanted. Let them forget Ethan Crow ever existed. He was 42 now, though he looked older. The mountains did that, carved lines into a man's face like water cuts through stone. His beard had gone gray at the edges. His hands, scarred and rough, moved with the efficiency of someone who'd learned that wasted motion could mean death. He stood 6'3", lean and hard, built like the pines that surrounded his cabin, weathered but unbreakable. The cabin itself was a testament to solitude. One room, though spacious enough. A stone fireplace he'd built himself dominated the north wall. His bed occupied the far corner, simple and functional. Shelves lined with books. More than most would expect from a mountain hermit. Darwin, Shakespeare, Thoreau. A man could be alone without being ignorant. Ethan moved back inside, letting the door swing shut behind him. The fire needed tending. Everything always needed something. That was the trade. Absolute freedom in exchange for absolute responsibility. No one to rely on. No one to disappoint. No one to bury. He was reaching for the poker when he heard it. Hoofbeats. His hand moved to the rifle above the mantel, before conscious thought caught up. Old habits. The kind that kept a man breathing in places where mercy was a luxury and hesitation was a grave. Through the window, he watched a rider approach. Young, maybe 20, bundled against the cold. The horse looked exhausted. Bad sign. No one rode a horse that hard unless something was chasing them or something worse waited ahead. Ethan opened the door before the kid could knock. "Turn around," Ethan said. His voice came out rough, underused. "Whatever you're selling, I'm not buying." The rider pulled back his hood. Tommy Breslin, the blacksmith's son. Christ, the last time Ethan had seen him, the kid was barely walking. "Mr. Crow?" Tommy's breath came in visible bursts. "Didn't think I'd find you. Most folks say you're dead." "Most folks are optimists." Ethan didn't move from the doorway. "What do you want?" "Town's asking for you." "Town can keep asking." "Mr. Crow, please." "No." Ethan started to close the door. "There's trouble," Tommy blurted. "Real trouble, the kind you used to handle." Ethan stopped. Despite himself, despite everything, he stopped. "I don't handle anything anymore. Haven't in 15 years. I know you got your reasons." Tommy dismounted, wincing as his feet hit the frozen ground. "But there's this woman, Mara Vance, and the Keller brothers have been, not my problem. They're going to kill her." A silence stretched between them, broken only by the wind through the pines. "Then she should leave town," Ethan said finally. "She's got nowhere to go, no family, no money. They fired her from the boarding house last month, and now she's been sleeping in the old church basement, and the Kellers found out, and they've been—" Tommy's voice cracked. "Please. My pa said you were the only one who ever stood up to them, said you were the only one they feared. Your pa's memory is selective." Ethan's jaw tightened. "I left that town for a reason." "Yeah, well, the town you left is worse now. The Kellers run everything. Sheriff's in their pocket. Anyone who speaks up gets run out or worse." "And you think one broken-down hermit is going to change that?" Tommy met his eyes. The kid had his father's stubbornness. "I think you're the only one who might." Ethan stared at him for a long moment, then shook his head. "Water your horse at the trough. There's dried meat in the saddlebag by the door. Take it, then leave." "Mr. Crow, I'm not who your father remembers." Ethan's voice went flat, final. "That man died a long time ago. Whatever's happening in Black Hollow Ridge, it'll happen without me." He closed the door, stood there listening as Tommy hesitated, then mounted up, then rode away. The hoofbeats faded into silence. Ethan walked to the window and watched until the kid disappeared into the tree line. Then he poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey and sat by the fire. Mara Vance. He didn't know the name, probably someone who'd come to town after he left looking for a fresh start. Black Hollow Ridge attracted that type, people running from something, hoping the frontier would let them forget. It never did. Ethan had learned that lesson the hard way. The frontier didn't erase the past. It just gave you new problems to stack on top of the old ones. He drank the whiskey, poured another, the Keller brothers. Now those were names he remembered. Jack and Cole Keller, mean even as boys. Their father had run cattle and raised his sons with a leather belt and a short temper. By the time Ethan left, they'd been young men just beginning to understand the power that came with violence. Apparently they'd refined that understanding. Not his problem. He'd made that choice 15 years ago, made it standing over a grave, swearing he'd never again care enough about another human being to feel what he'd felt that day. So far, he'd kept that promise. He refilled his glass. Outside, the first snow began to fall. 3 days later, Ethan ran out of coffee. This was a problem. A man could endure a lot on the frontier: cold, isolation, the particular kind of silence that made you question your own sanity. But coffee was non-negotiable. He'd put off the trip as long as possible. His monthly supply run wasn't due for another week, but stretching grounds only worked so many times. Eventually, you were just drinking hot water and lying to yourself. Black Hollow Ridge was a 6-mile ride. Ethan saddled his horse, a sturdy roan mare named Ruth, who'd been with him almost as long as the cabin, and made the journey in silence. The snow had stopped, leaving everything coated in white. Beautiful, if you were the type to notice. Ethan noticed only that it made tracking easier and movement harder. The town materialized from the tree line like something from a half-remembered dream. Same buildings, mostly. Same rutted Main Street. But Tommy had been right. Something felt different, harder. The few people visible moved with their heads down, purposeful. Nobody lingered. Nobody laughed. Ethan tied Ruth outside Mitchell's general store and went inside. Sarah Mitchell looked up from the counter, and her face went through several expressions in rapid succession: shock, disbelief, something that might have been hope. Ethan Crow. She said it like she was testing whether he was real. Lord above, Tom Breslin said he'd found you, but I didn't believe Coffee, Ethan interrupted. 5 pounds. Dark roast if you have it. Sarah blinked. 15 years, and the man wanted coffee. She moved to gather it, hands shaking slightly. We heard you were dead. Disappointing, I know. That's not... She stopped, seemed to reconsider. It's good to see you, really. Ethan grunted. His eyes scanned the store. Less inventory than he remembered. Shelves that should have been full sat half empty. Sarah noticed him noticing. Times are hard, she said quietly. The Kellers control the freight contracts now. We get what they decide to send us, when they decide to send it. Not my problem. I know you don't... Sarah wrapped the coffee, her movements practiced. That'll be $3. Ethan paid, turned to leave. She's not a bad person, Sarah said suddenly. Mara, whatever you've heard. Ethan stopped at the door. I haven't heard anything. She's just had bad luck, wrong place, wrong time, wrong face for this town. Sarah's voice dropped. They're going to kill her, Ethan. Maybe not today, but soon. The Kellers have decided she's entertainment, and when they get bored, then she should leave. Where? She's got nothing. No horse, no money, no skills they value. She's trapped. Ethan's hand tightened on the door handle. World's full of trapped people. I can't save them all. I'm not asking you to save them all. Sarah's eyes held his. I'm asking you to save one. He left without answering. The street outside was busier now. Ethan led Ruth toward the livery stable, intending to water her before the ride back. That's when he heard it. Laughter. The wrong kind. The kind that had edges. It came from the alley beside the Silver Dollar Saloon. Ethan told himself to keep walking, told himself it wasn't his business, told himself whatever was happening didn't concern him. He walked toward the alley anyway. 5 men stood in a rough circle. In the center, on her hands and knees in the mud and slush, was a woman. She wore a dress that had once been decent, but was now torn and filthy. Her dark hair hung in tangles around her face. As Ethan watched, one of the men, Jack Keller, older now but still recognizable, threw something at her, a rock maybe, or a chunk of ice. "Come on, Mara," Jack called out, his voice carrying that particular tone of someone who enjoyed cruelty. "Show us that famous pride of yours. Where'd it go?" The woman, Mara, didn't respond, just stayed there, head down, shoulders shaking. "I think she's crying," another man said. "Look, the bitch is crying." "Nah, she don't cry," Cole Keller chimed in. He was bigger than his brother, meaner looking. "She's too good for tears, ain't you, Mara? Too good for all of us." Ethan recognized the other three men. Local trash, the kind that followed the Kellers like dogs hoping for scraps. One of them kicked slush at Mara, soaking her further. "Maybe she's sick," Jack said. "Maybe we should check." "Cole, why don't you check if she's sick?" Cole grinned and stepped toward her. That's when Mara looked up. Ethan saw her face for the first time. Mid-20s, maybe. Features that might have been pretty if they weren't marked with bruises and exhaustion. But it was her eyes that stopped him. Dark eyes that should have been beaten down, terrified, broken. They weren't. They were angry. Even on her knees in the mud, surrounded by men who clearly intended her harm, Mara Vance looked at Cole Keller with pure, undiluted rage. "Touch me," she said, her voice raw but steady, "and I'll bite your fingers off." Cole laughed. So did the others, but Ethan heard the uncertainty in it. They'd expected submission, expected her to beg or cry or run. The defiance confused them. It was the confusion that made them more dangerous. Cole's hand dropped to his belt. "Guess we need to teach you some manners." Ethan found himself walking into the alley before he decided to move. "Keller." The single word cut through the laughter like a knife. 5 heads swiveled toward him. Ethan saw recognition dawn on the Keller brothers' faces, followed by something that might have been fear, quickly buried under bravado. "Well, hell," Jack said slowly. "Ethan Crow. Heard you were dead." "Heard wrong." Ethan's eyes moved from face to face, cataloging threats. Cole was the immediate problem, bigger, more volatile. But Jack was smarter, more dangerous long-term. The other 3 would run if things turned violent. "You boys having fun?" "Just teaching a lesson," Cole said. His hand had moved away from his belt but hovered near the pistol at his hip. "Nothing that concerns you." "You're right. Doesn't concern me at all." Ethan's gaze dropped to Mara. She was watching him now, trying to figure out if he was another threat or something else. "Stand up." For a moment, he thought she might refuse out of sheer stubbornness. Then she pushed herself to her feet, unsteady but upright. Mud and ice clung to her dress. She was shivering, from cold or fear or rage, hard to tell. "Walk behind me," Ethan said. "Don't run, don't talk, just walk." "Now wait a minute." Jack started forward. Ethan's hand moved to his own pistol. Didn't draw it, just let his fingers rest on the grip. The gesture was casual, almost lazy. The message wasn't, "You want to do this?" Ethan asked quietly. "Right here, right now? In front of witnesses?" Jack stopped. Ethan could see him calculating, weighing reputation against survival, bravado against the memory of who Ethan Crow had been 15 years ago. "She's our business," Jack said finally. "Been our business for weeks." "Not anymore." "You can't just—" "I can." Ethan's voice remained level. "I am. You have a problem with that. We can settle it however you want, but it'll get settled." The alley went quiet. Somewhere in the distance a door slammed, a dog barked. Normal sounds of a town going about its day, oblivious to the violence brewing 3 feet off the main street. Cole's hand twitched toward his gun. "Don't," Ethan said. Not a warning, a prediction. Cole froze. Whatever he saw in Ethan's eyes convinced him. "This isn't over," Jack said. "You can't hide her forever." "Don't plan to hide her at all." Ethan stepped back, keeping his eyes on the Kellers. "Come on." Mara moved. Slow at first, like an animal expecting a trap, then faster as she got past the men. She fell into step behind Ethan, close enough that he could hear her ragged breathing. They walked out of the alley together. Ethan kept his hand near his gun until they reached Ruth. Only then did he turn and look at Mara properly. She was worse up close. The bruises weren't fresh, various stages of healing, suggesting this had been going on a while. Her hands, he noticed, were wrapped in dirty cloth. Frostbite, probably. Her lips had a blue tinge. "You got somewhere to go?" he asked. She shook her head. "Family?" Another shake. "Friends?" She laughed. It came out bitter, broken. "You just met everyone in this town who gives a damn about me." Ethan stood there, Ruth's reins in one hand, this stranger's life suddenly in the other. Every instinct screamed at him to walk away. He'd done his good deed, stopped the immediate threat. Anything else was asking for complications he didn't need. He looked back at the alley. Jack and Cole stood at the entrance, watching, waiting. The second Ethan left, they'd be on her again. Probably worse this time for the humiliation. Mara seemed to realize it too. Her defiance cracked just for a moment, and Ethan saw the terror underneath. "Please," she whispered. "I don't have anywhere else." Ethan closed his eyes. 15 years. 15 years he'd kept his distance, kept his walls up, kept himself safe from exactly this kind of entanglement. "Get on the horse," he heard himself say. She stared at him. "What?" "Get on the damn horse before I change my mind." Mara didn't need to be told twice. She struggled to mount. Too weak, too cold. And Ethan had to help her up. She felt like she weighed nothing. When was the last time she'd eaten? He swung up behind her, felt her stiffen at the proximity. "Relax. 6 miles to my cabin. You fall off, I'm not coming back for you." He turned Ruth toward the edge of town. As they passed the general store, Ethan saw Sarah Mitchell in the window. She pressed her hand to the glass in something like a blessing. Other faces appeared in windows. Some curious, some disapproving. By nightfall, the whole town would know. Ethan Crow had returned from the dead and stolen Mara Vance right out from under the Kellers' noses. Ethan didn't look back. He'd made his choice. For better or worse, he'd broken his silence. Now he'd have to live with the noise. The ride to the cabin passed in tense quiet. Mara held herself rigid, trying not to touch him more than necessary. Ethan could feel her shivering increase as they climbed higher into the mountains. The temperature dropped with the elevation, and her wet dress was doing her no favors. "How long since you ate?" he asked. 2 days, maybe 3. Her voice came out hoarse. "Hard to keep track." Ethan grunted. He'd packed jerky in his saddlebag, always did for long rides. He pulled a piece out and handed it to her. She took it with those wrapped hands, fumbling to unwrap enough cloth to hold it. He caught a glimpse of the frostbite underneath. Bad. Not lose the fingers bad, but close. "What happened to your hands?" "Slept outside." She bit into the jerky like she was afraid it would disappear. 3 nights ago. Thought the church would be warmer than it was. The church has heat, not in the basement, not where they let me sleep. She chewed slowly, making it last. Father Morrison means well, but the congregation made it clear I wasn't welcome at services. Said I'd corrupt the other women. Corrupt them how? Mara's laugh was sharp. By existing, mostly. I'm unmarried and childless at 26. That makes me either a whore or a witch, depending on who you ask. Which are you? Neither, just unlucky. She finished the jerky, licked her fingers despite the pain it clearly caused. I came here 2 years ago looking for work. Found it at the boarding house. Cooking, cleaning. Mrs. Brennan was kind. Then she died, and her son took over, and he was less kind. Ethan didn't need her to spell it out. He'd known men like Brennan's son, the type who thought women without protection were community property. You fight back? Broke his nose with a skillet. No apology in her voice. He fired me. Told everyone I'd tried to seduce him and got violent when he refused. Town believed him, of course. Why wouldn't they? Because you're covered in bruises and sleeping in church basements? That came later, after I ran out of money and places to stay. The Kellers decided I needed to be reminded of my place. Her voice went flat, distant. They've been reminding me for weeks. They crested the final ridge, and the cabin came into view. Mara tensed again, and Ethan realized what she must be thinking. Isolated cabin, strange man, no witnesses. There's a lock on the inside of the door, he said. You can use it. She turned slightly, trying to see his face. Why would you tell me that? Because you're afraid I'm going to hurt you, and I'm not. He guided Ruth to the hitching post. I don't know what I'm going to do with you. But I'm not going to hurt you. They dismounted. Mara nearly collapsed when her feet hit the ground, and Ethan caught her by reflex. She flinched at the contact, then forced herself still. Sorry, she muttered. For what? Being trouble. I'm always trouble. Trouble found you. Different thing. He helped her to the porch. Can you walk? I can do whatever I have to do. There was steel in her voice despite the shaking. Ethan found himself almost respecting it. Inside, the cabin's warmth hit them like a wall. Mara swayed on her feet, and Ethan guided her to the chair by the fireplace. She sat down hard, exhaustion finally overwhelming pride. Don't move, he said. He built up the fire, then found his cleanest blanket and draped it over her shoulders. She clutched it with those damaged hands, trying to stop shivering. It wasn't working. Ethan moved to his small stove and started heating water. Coffee first. He hadn't had any in days and wasn't about to waste his new supply. But also soup. He had vegetables and salt pork that would make a decent broth. While the water heated, he looked at Mara properly in the firelight. The bruises were worse than he'd thought. Someone had hit her face recently enough that the swelling hadn't fully gone down. Her lip was split. There was a cut above her left eyebrow that should have been stitched, but wasn't. The Kellers do all that? She nodded. Anyone else? A few others. Once the Kellers decided I was fair game, everyone felt entitled to a piece. She pulled the blanket tighter. I fought back when I could. That made it worse. Good. She looked at him, surprised. Good? Better to fight and lose than not fight at all. He poured coffee, handed her a cup. You keep your spine, you keep yourself. Everything else can be rebuilt. Mara wrapped both hands around the cup, letting the heat seep through the cloth. She sipped carefully, her eyes closed. This is the best thing I've tasted in months. It's coffee. It's not mud water and it's not melted snow. She took another sip. It's the best thing I've tasted in months. They sat in silence while the soup cooked. Ethan found himself watching her, the way she held the coffee like it was precious, the way her eyes tracked to the door every few minutes, the way she sat poised to run despite having nowhere to go. Why did you help me? She asked suddenly. Ethan considered the question, considered lying, decided on something close to truth. Don't know. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. He stirred the soup, added more salt. I came to town for coffee, saw what was happening, made a choice, regretted it immediately. You could still take me back. Could. But you won't. No. Why not? Ethan ladled soup into a bowl, handed it to her. Because I saw your eyes when Cole Keller came at you. You weren't beaten. Plenty of people less than you, they'd have been broken by now, but you were ready to bite his fingers off. I meant it. I know you did. That's why I helped. He poured his own soup, sat down across from her. Eat. Then we'll deal with your hands. Mara ate. Not fast, but steady, forcing herself to slow down despite obvious hunger. Smart. Eating too fast after starvation made you sick. When she finished, Ethan brought over his medical supplies, such as they were. Living alone in the mountains, you learned basic field medicine, or you died. Let me see. Mara unwrapped her hands slowly. The cloth stuck to the damaged skin. Some of the wounds reopened. Ethan examined them in the firelight. You'll keep the fingers, he said. Barely. Another few days in the cold, you wouldn't have. Lucky me. He cleaned the wounds with whiskey. She hissed, but didn't pull away. Then he applied salve, bear grease mixed with herbs, an old recipe a Ute medicine woman had taught him years ago, and rewrapped her hands in clean cloth. That'll help with the healing. Keep them wrapped and warm. Don't use them more than you have to for a few days. I can work. Whatever you need. I don't need anything. Then why am I here? Ethan sat back, studied her face. Good question. Why was she here? What exactly was his plan? You can stay until you heal, he said finally. Figure out where to go next. I'll give you supplies for the road when you leave. And if I have nowhere to go? Everyone has somewhere. No. Mara's voice went hard. Some of us don't. Some of us used up all our somewheres and are just trying to survive until the next disaster. Ethan recognized the tone. He'd used it himself often enough. Then you'll survive here until you think of something else. He stood, moved to his bookshelf. You can have the bed. I'll sleep by the fire. I can't take your bed. You can, and you will. Arguing wastes energy you don't have. He pulled down a volume of Whitman, settled into his chair. There's a chamber pot under the bed. Water bucket by the door. Don't go outside alone. There's wolves, and they're hungry this time of year. Mara stared at him. You're serious. You're really going to let me stay? For now. Why? Because... Ethan stopped. Thought about Tommy Breslin riding through a blizzard to find him. About Sarah Mitchell's quiet plea. About 15 years of isolation and the particular kind of cowardice that came with it. Because I'm tired of being alone with my ghosts. It was more honesty than he'd intended. Mara seemed to recognize it. What are their names? She asked softly. Your ghosts. Go to bed, Mara. She stood still wrapped in the blanket and moved toward the bed. At the last moment, she turned back. Thank you, she said. I know it doesn't mean much, but thank you. Ethan didn't answer, just opened his book and pretended to read. He listened as she climbed into bed, as her breathing gradually slowed and deepened into sleep. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the shutters. Snow began to fall again. He could hear it hissing against the roof. They were snowed in for the night, probably longer. Him and a stranger he'd rescued on impulse, trapped together in a one-room cabin with winter howling outside, and the Keller brothers nursing their wounded pride down in the valley. Ethan closed his book and stared into the fire. What the hell had he done? Ethan woke to the sound of retching. He was on his feet before consciousness fully caught up, hand reaching for the rifle that wasn't there because he'd left it by the door like an idiot. The fire had burned down to embers. Gray dawn light leaked through the shutters, and Mara was bent over the chamber pot, her whole body convulsing. Easy, he said, moving toward her. She flinched away from his voice, still heaving. He grabbed the water bucket and a clean cloth, set them beside her. When did this start? She couldn't answer, just shook her head and retched again. Nothing came up. Her stomach had been too empty for too long. Dry heaves, painful and useless. Ethan crouched a few feet away, giving her space. He'd seen this before. Starvation did strange things to a body. Feed someone too much too fast after extended hunger, and their system rebelled. The soup last night had probably been too rich. When the heaving finally stopped, Mara collapsed back against the bed frame. Sweat plastered her hair to her face despite the cold. She was shaking worse than yesterday. I'm sorry, she managed. I'll clean it up. You'll do no such thing. Ethan soaked the cloth in water, wrung it out, handed it to her. Wipe your face, then get back in bed. You need to rest, that's all. He moved to the stove, started building up the fire. I'll make something lighter. Broth, no solids. Your stomach needs to remember how to work. Mara cleaned herself up with shaking hands, then crawled back into bed without argument. That alone told Ethan how bad she felt. The woman who'd threatened to bite Cole Keller's fingers off wouldn't surrender this easily unless she had no choice. While the broth heated, Ethan dealt with the chamber pot, then checked the weather. Snow had stopped, but the sky promised more. The temperature had dropped another 10 degrees overnight. He'd need to bring in more firewood soon, check on Ruth in the lean-to stable, make sure the water trough hadn't frozen solid. First, though, he needed to keep Mara alive. He brought her the broth in a tin cup. She tried to hold it herself, failed, hands still too damaged. Ethan sat on the edge of the bed and held it for her while she sipped. Slow, he said when she tried to drink too fast. Your body doesn't trust food right now. Gotta convince it. How long does that take? Days, maybe a week. He pulled the cup back when she reached for more. Small amounts, often. We'll try again in an hour. Mara slumped against the pillow. She looked worse in daylight, the bruises more vivid, the exhaustion more obvious. But her eyes were still sharp, still watching him with that mix of suspicion and desperate hope. You've done this before, she said, taken care of someone starving. Once. Ethan stood, moved away from the bed. Long time ago. What happened to them? He didn't answer, just went to stoke the fire, his back to her. They died, Mara said quietly. It wasn't a question. Most people die eventually. He added another log, watch the flames catch. Doesn't mean you stop trying to keep them alive. Silence settled between them. Outside, a raven called. Ethan listened to Mara's breathing slowly even out as she drifted back to sleep. When he was sure she was out, he finally let himself exhale. The person he'd tried to save hadn't been starving. She'd been sick with fever and infection after a difficult childbirth. He'd done everything he knew how to do, kept her warm, forced liquids, cleaned the wound, prayed to a deity he didn't believe in. None of it had mattered. She'd died anyway, and the baby with her. That was 15 years ago. That was why he lived alone now. Ethan shook his head, clearing the memory. Ancient history. Mara was different. Just hungry and beaten, nothing some food and time wouldn't fix. She'd heal, figure out where to go, and leave. He'd go back to his books and his solitude. Simple. He almost believed it. The day passed in strange domesticity. Ethan brought Mara broth every hour, forcing her to drink despite her protests. Between feedings, he handled the outdoor work, chopping wood, tending Ruth, checking his trap lines. The cabin felt different with another person in it. Smaller. The silence wasn't as complete. Even when Mara slept, he could hear her breathing, the small sounds she made shifting position. It bothered him more than it should. That evening, he made a thin stew, mostly broth with a few soft vegetables. Mara managed half a bowl before her stomach rebelled again, but she kept it down this time. Progress. Tell me about the town, Ethan said while she ate. What's changed since I left? Mara looked at him over the bowl. You really don't go down there? Once a month for supplies. In, out, no conversation. He poured himself coffee. I pay attention to inventory, not gossip. The Kellers happened. She took another careful sip. They inherited their father's ranch 10 years ago. Started expanding, bought out smaller homesteads, ran off anyone who wouldn't sell. Sheriff Yates tried to stop them. He had an accident. What kind of accident? The kind where you fall down the stairs and break your neck. Mara's voice went flat. New sheriff's name is Pike. He works for the Kellers, so does half the town council. Anyone who speaks up finds their business boycotted or their property vandalized. Most people just keep their heads down. And you? I wasn't smart enough to keep my head down. She set the bowl aside. When Brennan's son came at me, I should have just let him. Would have been easier. Easier isn't always better. No, but it's survivable. She pulled the blanket tighter. That's all I wanted, just to survive long enough to save money and leave. But I couldn't even manage that. Ethan studied her face. Where would you have gone? West, California maybe, somewhere warm where nobody knows my name. She laughed bitterly. Stupid dream. West takes money I don't have. Dreams aren't stupid, just expensive. Same thing when you're broke. He couldn't argue with that. They sat in silence while the fire crackled. Snow had started again outside. He could hear it against the roof. They'd be trapped here for days, maybe longer if the storm turned serious. What about you? Mara asked suddenly. Why are you up here alone? Because I choose to be. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. He stood, moved to wash the dishes. You should sleep. Your body needs rest to heal. I've been sleeping all day. Then sleep all night too. I'm not much for conversation anyway. Mara watched him for a long moment, then shook her head. You're a terrible liar. Excuse me? You've got a cabin full of books. Shakespeare, Thoreau, Darwin. People who hate conversation don't read that much. She gestured at the shelves. You're not avoiding people because you don't like them. You're avoiding them because you liked someone too much once, and it destroyed you. Ethan's hand stilled in the wash water. He turned slowly. You don't know anything about me. I know grief when I see it. Her voice softened. I know what it looks like when someone's been running from their past so long they've forgotten how to stand still. And you're an expert on running? I'm an expert on survival. Running's part of it. She met his eyes. But here's the thing about running. Eventually you get tired. Eventually you have to stop and face whatever's chasing you. Nothing's chasing me. No, it already caught you. That's worse. Ethan wanted to argue, to tell her she was wrong, to throw her words back in her face. But he couldn't. Because she wasn't wrong. She was looking at him like she could see straight through 15 years of carefully constructed walls. Go to bed, Mara. I hit a nerve. You hit something. Now go to bed before I regret not leaving you in that alley." She smiled. It transformed her face, made her look younger, less haunted. "You wouldn't have left me. You're too decent." "I'm not decent. I'm a coward who ran away from everything that mattered." "Then why did you help me? Because I'm an idiot. Or because you're tired of running." She pulled the blanket around her shoulders and moved toward the bed. "Either way, thank you. For the food and the shelter and the honesty, even when it hurts." Ethan didn't respond. Just listened as she settled in, as her breathing slowed. When he was sure she was asleep, he sat by the fire with his book and tried to read. The words blurred together. All he could see was her face, those dark eyes looking at him like he was something other than a broken hermit hiding from his ghosts. The storm hit hard around midnight. Wind hammered the cabin, driving snow against the walls with enough force to rattle the shutters. Ethan lay awake by the fire, listening to the mountains rage. This was a bad one, the kind that could last days and leave drifts 10 feet high. They were well and truly trapped now. He heard Mara wake, heard her sharp intake of breath as thunder cracked overhead. Winter thunder, rare and vicious. The cabin shook. "It's just weather," he called out. "Cabin solid. We're safe." "I know." But her voice trembled. "I've just never been this high in a storm. Feels like the mountain's trying to shake us off." "It is. Mountain doesn't want us here. We're here anyway." He added wood to the fire. "Go back to sleep." "Can't. Too loud." Ethan sighed. He grabbed his book and moved to the chair beside the bed where the lamplight was better. Mara watched him settle in. "What are you reading?" "Whitman." "Never heard of him." "Poet. American. Wrote about grass and democracy and the soul." He opened to a marked page. "Most people find him pretentious." "What do you find him?" "Honest." Ethan scanned the familiar words. He wrote what he felt without apology. Rare quality. "Will you read some?" He looked at her, surprised. "You want poetry?" "I want something other than wind and my own thoughts." She shifted, trying to get comfortable. "Please." Ethan hesitated, then began to read. His voice was rough, unpracticed at speaking aloud for long periods. But the words were good. Whitman's long, rolling lines about the self and the world and the connection between them. He read about bodies and souls, about grass growing over battlefields, about the fundamental dignity of existence. Mara listened without interruption. At some point, her eyes closed, but her breathing didn't settle into sleep. Just resting, letting the words wash over her. When he finished the poem, she spoke without opening her eyes. "Do you believe that? What he wrote about the soul being indestructible?" "Some days." "What about the other days?" "Other days I think we're just meat and electricity, and when we die, we're done." "That's bleak." "It's honest." He closed the book. "What do you believe?" Mara opened her eyes, stared at the ceiling. "I believe we're tougher than we think, that we can survive things that should break us. Beyond that," she shrugged. "I'm still figuring it out." The storm raged on. They sat in silence, listening to the mountain's tantrum. Eventually, Mara did sleep. Ethan stayed in the chair, book in his lap, watching the fire cast shadows across the cabin walls. He tried to remember the last time he'd read to someone. Caroline, probably. His wife. She'd loved poetry, especially in the evenings when the day's work was done. He'd read to her while she sewed or knitted, their daughter asleep in the cradle beside them. That life felt like something that had happened to someone else. The next 3 days fell into a rhythm. Storm outside, routine inside. Ethan cooked, Mara ate, both of them circled around the elephant in the room. What happened next? Her hands were healing, her stomach had adjusted to regular food. The bruises were fading to yellow and green. She was getting better, which meant eventually she'd leave. Neither of them mentioned it. Instead, they talked. Small things at first. Weather, hunting stories, books. Ethan found himself speaking more than he had in years. Mara was sharp, well-read despite limited formal education. She taught herself from whatever books she could borrow or steal. They argued about Darwin, agreed about Shakespeare, disagreed violently about Thoreau. "He's a hypocrite," Mara insisted on the third night. They'd moved beyond broth to actual stew, and she was eating like a normal person now. All that talk about self-reliance while his mother did his laundry. Missing the point. Am I? He preached isolation while walking back to town for dinner parties. She gestured with her spoon. That's not self-reliance, that's tourism. Ethan found himself almost smiling. You're not wrong. Of course I'm not wrong. I've been actually living the hard life he romanticized. Trust me, there's nothing noble about poverty. He wasn't writing about poverty, he was writing about freedom. Same thing when you're broke. She finished her stew. Freedom costs money. Anyone who says otherwise has never been without either. Fair enough. Ethan took her bowl, went to refill it. But the core idea stands. Strip away the unnecessary, focus on what matters. There's value in that. There's value in not freezing to death, too. Funny how Thoreau never mentioned that. He handed her the second bowl. She took it without thinking, her wrapped hands more dexterous now. She'd started helping around the cabin, small things within her limitations. Tidying, folding, organizing his chaotic bookshelf. He'd told her to stop. She'd ignored him. Why do you do that? He asked. Do what? Help. I told you to rest. I've rested. Now I need to be useful. She ate more slowly this time, savoring it. I'm not good at accepting charity. It's not charity. Then what is it? Ethan didn't have a good answer for that. What was it? Why was she here? What was he doing? Temporary, he said finally. It's temporary. Something flickered across Mara's face, disappointment maybe, or resignation. Right. Temporary. The conversation died. They finished eating in silence. Ethan washed up while Mara sat by the fire, staring into the flames. When he came back, she was holding one of his books, a collection of Blake's poetry. Can I ask you something personal? She said. You can ask. Doesn't mean I'll answer. The woman you tried to save, the one who died, was she your wife? Ethan's hands clenched. What makes you think? You said once when I asked if you'd cared for someone starving, but your reaction said more than that. And you've got a woman's shawl folded in the bottom of that trunk. She gestured toward the corner. You keep it hidden, but you keep it. That's grief, not history. He could lie, should lie. Instead, he found himself sitting down across from her. Her name was Caroline. We married young, built a homestead about 20 miles from here. Had a daughter, Emma. The names felt strange in his mouth after so long. Caroline got pregnant again when Emma was 2. Something went wrong during the birth. She bled too much, got infected. I tried everything. Wasn't enough. The baby? Died with her. His voice stayed level through long practice. Buried them together in the spring when the ground thawed. Sold the homestead, built this cabin, and stopped caring about anything that could hurt me. Mara was quiet for a long moment. What happened to Emma? My sister took her. Rachel lives in Denver, married to a banker. Good people. They can give her things I can't. He stared at the fire. Better than growing up with a father who's half ghost. You gave up your daughter? The judgment in her voice stung. I gave her a chance at a real life. That's not giving up. That's being smart. That's running away. She was 3 years old and I could barely take care of myself. What was I supposed to do, raise her up here in isolation while I drank myself to death? His voice rose despite his best efforts. I made the right choice. For who? For her. Did you ask what she wanted? She was 3. And now she's what? 17? 18? Mara leaned forward. Does she even know you're alive? Ethan stood abruptly. That's enough. Is it? Because it sounds like you've been hiding from more than just town. You've been hiding from everything, including your own child. You don't know what you're talking about. I know what it's like to be abandoned. Mara's voice went hard. I know what it does to a person, wondering why they weren't worth staying for. I stayed for 15 years before that. I stayed through grief and poverty, and he stopped, breathing hard. You think I wanted to leave her? I think you found an excuse to keep running and called it sacrifice. The words hit like a physical blow. Ethan turned away, hands shaking with rage or guilt, or both. Behind him, he heard Mara stand. I'm sorry, she said quietly. That was too far. Yes, it was. But I'm not wrong. He whirled on her. You're a stranger who's been here 4 days. You don't get to judge my choices. You're right, I don't. She met his eyes. But someone should, because from where I'm standing, you didn't lose your family. You threw them away. Ethan grabbed his coat. I'm going to check the traps. Don't wait up. He was out the door before she could respond, into the night and the snow and the cold that felt welcoming compared to the heat of that conversation. His breath came in harsh clouds. Anger pulsed through him, anger at Mara for pushing, at himself for telling her anything, at the whole damn situation. The storm had passed, leaving everything frozen and still. Ethan walked his trap line on autopilot, checking snares by moonlight. 2 rabbits, both frozen solid. He'd have to thaw them slow or the meat would be ruined. He should send Mara away. First clear day, give her supplies and directions to the nearest town west of here. Get his life back to normal. Except normal meant alone. Normal meant silence and books and slow death by isolation. Normal meant waking up every morning with nothing to do but survive until the next morning. When had normal started feeling like purgatory? He made it back to the cabin near midnight. The lights were still on. Mara sat by the fire, wrapped in the blanket, clearly waiting for him. I thought you'd freeze to death out there, she said. Takes more than cold to kill me. He hung up his coat, set the rabbits by the door. You should be asleep. I should apologize first. She stood, faced him. What I said about Emma, that wasn't fair. I don't know what you went through or why you made the choices you made. No, you don't. But I do know what it's like to be alone, to feel like the world would be better off without you in it. Her voice softened. And I know that's a lie we tell ourselves to justify giving up. Ethan wanted to stay angry. Anger was simple, familiar. But looking at her face, bruised and healing and absolutely sincere, he couldn't hold on to it. She writes to me, he said quietly. Emma. My sister makes sure of it. Every 6 months, like clockwork. Tells me about school and friends and all the normal things teenage girls care about. Do you write back? No. Why not? Because I'm a stranger to her now. Better to let her think I'm dead than try to be something I'm not. Mara shook her head. You really believe that? I have to, otherwise... His voice cracked. Otherwise, I've wasted 15 years for nothing. She crossed the cabin, stopped close enough that he could see the details of her face in the firelight. It's not too late. To write back, to try, to stop hiding. Says the woman who came to Black Hollow Ridge running from her own past. I came here looking for a future, didn't find one, but at least I tried. She reached out, hesitated, then touched his arm. You helped me when I had nothing. Let me help you. How? By being honest. You're not protecting Emma by staying away. You're protecting yourself from getting hurt again. Her hand dropped. And maybe that's okay. Maybe that's what you need, but don't pretend it's for her sake. Ethan looked at her. This stranger who'd somehow seen through every defense he'd built, who pushed and prodded and refused to let him hide. Part of him hated her for it. Part of him was grateful beyond words. I don't know how to be anything other than alone anymore, he admitted. That's all right. Neither do I. She smiled slightly. We can figure it out together, at least until temporary ends. There was something in her eyes when she said temporary, something that made Ethan think she was no more eager to leave than he was to send her away. But neither of them was ready to say it out loud. Not yet. 2 weeks passed before the weather cleared enough for real work. Ethan woke one morning to sunlight streaming through the shutters. Actual sunlight, not the weak gray filter they'd been living under. The temperature had climbed above freezing. The snow had stopped. Mara was already up, dressed in a set of his old clothes she'd altered to fit. The pants were rolled at the ankles, the shirt belted at the waist. She'd unwrapped her hands that morning, declared them healed enough. We're going hunting, Ethan announced. She looked up from the pot of oatmeal she was stirring. We? You need to know how to survive up here. That means learning to hunt. He pulled down his rifle, began checking the action. Can't live on my charity forever. Something flickered across her face at the word charity, but she didn't argue. I've never shot a gun. I know, that's why we're starting today. He loaded ammunition into his pack. Dress warm, we'll be out most of the day. They set out an hour later. Ethan leading them into the forest on a game trail he knew well. The world had transformed overnight, everything sparkling and clean under fresh snow. Their breath came in white clouds. Mara walked behind him, stepping carefully in his tracks. "Why are we going this way?" she asked after a while. "Deer bed down in the ravine about 2 miles east. With the weather clearing, they'll be moving, looking for browse." He pointed to marks in the snow. "See that? Rabbit. And there, fox tracks. Probably hunting the same rabbit." Mara studied the prints. "How do you know it's a fox and not a dog?" "Pattern. Foxes walk in a straight line, placing their back feet in the prints their front feet made. Dogs wander more." He moved on. "Everything leaves a story if you know how to read it." They walked in silence for a while. Ethan found himself watching her from the corner of his eye. She moved better than he'd expected, steady on her feet despite the unfamiliar terrain. Observant too, stopping to examine tracks and broken branches without being told. "You're quiet," she said eventually. "Hunting requires quiet." "We're not hunting yet. We're walking." She caught up to walk beside him. "What are you thinking about?" "Nothing important." Liar. He shot her a look. She smiled, unbothered. "Fine. I was thinking you're less useless than I expected. High praise from the hermit." She stepped over a fallen log. "I'll try not to let it go to my head." "See that you don't?" But he almost smiled saying it. They reached the ravine around midday. Ethan had Mara wait while he scouted ahead, checking for signs. Fresh deer tracks everywhere. A small herd had passed through within the last few hours. He circled back to where she waited. 6 deer, maybe 7. Moving slow, feeding. He unslung the rifle. "I'm going to teach you to shoot." Mara's eyes widened. "Now?" "No better time." He showed her how to hold it, how to sight down the barrel, how to breathe and squeeze instead of pulling the trigger. She was clumsy at first, the rifle too heavy for her thin arms, but she learned fast, adjusting her stance without being told twice. "What am I aiming at?" "That tree, the one with the split trunk." He stepped back. "Take your time. Feel the weight. When you're ready, breathe out and squeeze." The shot cracked through the silence, echoing off the ravine walls. Mara stumbled back from the recoil, and Ethan caught her by the shoulders. "Did I hit it?" "Not even close. You jerked right at the last second." He helped her resettle the rifle. "Again, and this time, don't close your eyes." "I didn't." "You did. I saw you." He moved behind her, adjusted her elbows. "Fear makes you flinch. Control the fear, control the shot." She tried again. Missed again, but closer this time. The third shot clipped the edge of the tree, sending bark flying. "Better," Ethan said. "You're learning." They spent another hour practicing. By the end, Mara could hit the tree 3 times out of 5. Not great, but not terrible either. Ethan took the rifle back, reloaded. "Now we hunt for real. Stay behind me. Don't speak. If I tell you to freeze, you freeze. Understood?" She nodded. They moved deeper into the ravine, following the deer sign. Ethan tracked them to a clearing where several does were browsing on exposed grass. He raised his hand, signaling Mara to stop. She did, silent as snowfall. One clean shot dropped a young doe. The others scattered. Ethan was already moving, knife out, before the echo faded. Field dressing was brutal, messy work, but necessary. He worked quickly, efficiently, while Mara watched. "You gonna be sick?" he asked without looking up. "No." Her voice was steady. "I've seen worse than blood." "I know you have." He finished the gutting, began preparing the carcass for transport. "Doesn't mean it gets easier." "Does it bother you, killing them?" Ethan paused, considered the question. "Yes and no. I don't enjoy it, but I respect it. The deer dies, so I live. That's the trade." He tied off the last rope. "Everything's a trade up here. Warmth costs wood. Food costs death. Survival costs everything you've got. What does companionship cost?" He looked at her. "Why do you ask?" "Because I've been here 2 weeks, and you haven't sent me away yet." She met his eyes. "What's it costing you to let me stay?" Ethan stood, wiping blood from his hands. "My peace, mostly. I'd gotten used to silence." "Do you want me to leave?" "I want—" He stopped. What did he want? He'd asked himself that question every day for 2 weeks. I don't know. That's honest, at least. They hauled the deer back together, taking turns with the weight. The sun was setting by the time they reached the cabin, both of them exhausted. Ethan hung the meat in the cold storage while Mara started dinner from what was left of yesterday's stew. That night, after eating, she found him sharpening his knife by the fire. "Teach me that too," she said. "Knife work?" "Everything. Hunting, tracking, surviving." She sat down across from him. "If I'm going to make it out here, wherever here ends up being, I need to know what you know." "I'm not a teacher." "You taught me to shoot today. Taught me to read sign." She held out her hand. "Teach me the rest." Ethan looked at her outstretched hand, calloused now from work around the cabin. He thought about saying no. Thought about all the reasons getting closer was a mistake. He handed her the whetstone instead. Angle matters more than pressure. Watch. So began her education in earnest. Every day brought new lessons. How to set snares, read weather, identify edible plants, even in winter. Ethan found himself talking more than he had in years, explaining things he'd learned through hard experience. Mara absorbed it all with fierce concentration, asking questions until she understood. She was good at it, better than good. Within a week, she could track almost as well as he could. Within 2, she'd shot and killed her first rabbit without his help. "Clean kill," Ethan said, examining her work. "Right through the eye. Didn't even know it was coming." Mara stared at the dead rabbit in her hands. "I thought I'd feel different. Guilty, maybe." "And?" "I feel hungry." She looked up at him. "That make me a bad person?" "Makes you honest." He took the rabbit. "Come on. I'll show you how to skin it." They worked in comfortable silence now. The awkwardness of those first days had worn away, replaced by something easier. Ethan caught himself smiling more, laughing even, when Mara made some dry observation about his hermit habits. "You alphabetized your spice jars," she said one morning, holding up the evidence. "Easier to find what I need. You have 4 spices. Still easier." She shook her head, grinning. "You're insane." Says the woman who reorganized my entire bookshelf by publication date. That's called being helpful. That's called being obsessive. Look who's talking, Mr. Every tool has its designated hook. They were both laughing now, the kind of easy laughter that came from genuine comfort. Ethan realized with the start that he'd missed this. The simple pleasure of shared humor, of someone who got his jokes and gave as good as she got. Dangerous. This was dangerous. He was getting attached. The realization sobered him. He turned away, busied himself with the fire. "What's wrong?" Mara asked. "Nothing." "Another lie. You're full of them today." "Leave it alone, Mara." But she didn't. She came up beside him close enough that he could smell the pine soap she'd started using. "Talk to me. What just happened?" "This." He gestured between them. "Whatever this is, it's temporary, remember? You're going to leave eventually." "Am I?" She said it quietly, like she was testing the words. Ethan's heart kicked against his ribs. "You can't stay here forever." "Why not?" "Because..." He struggled for reasons that made sense. "Because you're 26 years old, and this is no life for someone with options." "What options? Town that wanted to kill me?" She stepped closer. "Face it, Crow. I've got nowhere else to go and you know it." "Then we'll find you somewhere. Come spring, Spring's months away. Lot can change in months." She was right. He knew she was right. But admitting it meant admitting he wanted her to stay, and wanting things had only ever brought him pain. "I can't do this," he said. "Can't get attached just to watch someone else leave or die or..." "I'm not Caroline." The name hung between them like smoke. Ethan's hands clenched. "Don't." "Someone has to say it. I'm not your wife. I'm not going to die in childbirth or disappear or turn into another ghost." She grabbed his arm, forcing him to look at her. "I'm here, right now, flesh and blood and alive. Stop waiting for me to turn into a tragedy." "Everyone turns into a tragedy eventually." "Then let's make the most of it before eventually comes." She kissed him. It was clumsy, unpracticed, and tasted like coffee and desperation. Ethan froze, every instinct screaming at him to pull away, to rebuild his walls, to protect himself. He kissed her back instead. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Mara rested her forehead against his. Tell me to leave, she whispered. If you really want me gone, tell me now, and I'll go at first thaw. Ethan closed his eyes. 15 years he'd been alone. 15 years of careful isolation, of refusing to care, of surviving instead of living. He was so damn tired of surviving. Stay, he heard himself say, at least until spring. We'll figure out the rest later. That's all I'm asking. She pulled back enough to see his face. I'm not asking for promises or futures, just now. I can do now. Good. She kissed him again, softer this time, because I'm tired of pretending I want to be anywhere else. They spent that night talking instead of sleeping. Real talking, the kind where you expose the raw parts you usually keep hidden. Mara told him about her childhood, raised by an aunt after her parents died, kicked out at 16 for being too mouthy. She'd worked her way west doing whatever jobs would have her, always moving, never quite belonging anywhere. Black Hollow Ridge was supposed to be different, she said. Somewhere I could finally stop running. Didn't work out that way. No, but maybe here does. She gestured at the cabin. Maybe this is where I stop. Ethan told her about Emma in return, about the guilt that ate at him, the letters he couldn't bring himself to answer, the fear that he'd ruined his daughter's life by leaving it. Write to her, Mara urged. You don't have to fix everything. Just let her know you're alive and thinking about her. What would I even say? The truth. That you're sorry. That you were broken and didn't know how to be a father anymore. She took his hand. That you're trying to figure out how to be a person again. Am I? Aren't you? He thought about the last few weeks, about teaching Mara to shoot, about their arguments over books, about the way laughter had started to feel natural again. Maybe, he admitted. Then tell her that. Tell her maybe. Mara squeezed his hand. It's more than she's got now. The next day, Ethan sat down and wrote to his daughter for the first time in 15 years. It was a short letter, awkward and stilted, but it was honest. He told her he was alive, told her he thought about her every day, told her he was sorry for being a coward. He didn't mail it right away, just folded it and put it in his pocket, where it stayed like a talisman against the fear. Winter settled in hard after that. They were snowed in more often than not, trapped together in the cabin. But trapped stopped feeling like the right word. Comfortable, maybe. Domestic. They fell into rhythms. Ethan hunting, Mara cooking, both of them reading by the fire in the evenings. Sometimes he'd read aloud and she'd listen. Sometimes she'd tell stories from her wandering years, and he'd laugh at the absurdity of it all. Slowly, carefully, they built something between them. Neither called it love. Too soon for that. Too fragile. But it was something that felt worth protecting. Then the Kellers came. Ethan heard them before he saw them. Horses laboring through deep snow, multiple riders. He grabbed his rifle and moved to the window. 3 men on horseback, approaching fast. Jack and Cole Keller, plus one of their usual followers. Mara, he said quietly. Back room, now. She was already moving, having learned to trust his instincts. She grabbed the pistol he'd started teaching her with and disappeared into the small storage area off the main cabin. Ethan opened the door before they could knock. Stood in the frame, rifle across his chest, blocking entry. Keller. Didn't know I was expecting company. Jack Keller pulled up short, his horse snorting steam. He looked older up close, harder, meaner. Time hadn't been kind to him. Heard you had something that belongs to us, Jack said. Nothing up here belongs to you. That bitch Mara Vance. She's been hiding out, hasn't she? Cole leaned forward in his saddle. Town's been wondering where she went. Figured you might know. Haven't seen anyone from town in weeks. Ethan's voice stayed level. Storm's been too bad. Funny thing. Jack dismounted, took a step forward. Sarah Mitchell says different. Says she saw you leave town with Mara right around the time she disappeared. Sarah Mitchell sees what she wants to see. So you're saying she's lying? I'm saying I came up here alone. What happened to some girl in town isn't my concern. Well, Cole dismounted too now. They were flanking him, trying to intimidate. Ethan didn't move. We could just look around, Cole suggested. Make sure you're telling the truth. Ethan's thumb moved to the rifle's hammer. The click was loud in the cold air. You could try, he said softly. but I've got good sight lines from here, and you'd be dead before you hit the ground. You threatening us, old man? But Cole's hand had moved away from his gun, stating facts. This is my land. I didn't invite you here. You leave now. No harm done. You push. Ethan met Jack's eyes. We both know how that ends. Silence stretched. The third man, younger than the Kellers and clearly nervous, shifted in his saddle. His horse danced sideways. Jack finally smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. You know, people in town are starting to ask questions about you, about what you're doing up here all alone. People in town should mind their business. Hard to do when you keep involving yourself in ours. Jack took a step closer. You want to play protector, fine, but understand what you're protecting. That woman's trash, Crow. Always has been. Get off my land. She spread her legs for half the... Ethan's rifle came up, aimed at Jack's head. I said, get off my land. The third man's horse reared. Cole's hand went to his gun, but Jack grabbed his arm, stopping him. Easy, Jack said to his brother. Then to Ethan, we're going. But this isn't over. She's got to come down eventually. And when she does, she won't. Everyone comes down eventually. Winter ends. Supplies run out. Jack mounted his horse. We can wait. They rode off, disappearing back into the trees. Ethan stood in the doorway until the sound of hoofbeats faded completely. Only then did he lower the rifle. They're gone, he called. Mara emerged from the back room, pale but steady. How much did you hear? Enough. She set down the pistol. They're going to keep coming, aren't they? Probably. I should leave. Go somewhere they won't follow. No. The word came out sharper than he intended. They follow because they're bullies. Running just convinces them they're right. And if they come back with more men? With the sheriff? Then we deal with it. Ethan moved to the window, watching the tree line. I'm not letting them take you. Why? Why are you fighting for me? Her voice cracked. I'm nobody. Just some woman you pulled out of an alley. He turned to face her. You're not nobody. Not to me. The words hung there, heavy with implication. Mara's eyes widened. Ethan, I know. I know it's stupid and dangerous and probably going to end badly. He crossed to her, took her hands. But I'm done pretending I don't care, done hiding from anything that might hurt. You asked what companionship costs? This. This is what it costs. Fighting, standing up, refusing to run. What if we lose? Then we lose together. He pulled her close. But we don't lose without a fight. She wrapped her arms around and buried her face in his shoulder. He could feel her shaking, fear or relief, or both. I'm scared, she whispered. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. He kissed the top of her head. We're going to be smart about this. Prepared. They want to fight. We'll give them one they won't forget. Over the next week, Ethan turned the cabin into a fortress. He reinforced the door, added a bar across it at night, set up sight lines and firing positions, taught Mara to shoot from cover, to reload fast, to aim for center mass instead of trying for fancy shots. She learned it all with grim determination. They practiced until her hands bled, until she could hit a target at 50 yards more often than not, until the weight of the pistol felt natural in her grip. They teach you to be a soldier too? She asked one afternoon, exhausted after hours of drills. Taught myself. Had to, out here. He checked her stance, adjusted her grip. Again. She fired. Hit the target dead center. Better. You're getting good at this. Good enough to stop them if they come? Ethan looked at her. This woman who'd been beaten and starved and humiliated but refused to break, who practiced until her hands bled and never once complained, who stood beside him now with a gun in her hand and steel in her spine. Good enough, he said, and then some. That night, they made love for the first time. It was clumsy and tender and felt like a promise neither of them was quite ready to speak aloud. Afterwards, lying tangled together in the narrow bed, Mara traced the scars on his chest. Tell me we're going to make it, she said. I can't promise that. Then lie to me. He kissed her forehead. We're going to make it. She smiled against his skin. Thank you. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, the fire burning low. Outside, the wind picked up. Snow began to fall again, covering their tracks, isolating them further. But inside the cabin, for the first time in 15 years, Ethan Crow didn't feel alone. He felt ready. 3 weeks of peace followed the Kellers' visit. 3 weeks where Ethan almost let himself believe they'd given up. Then February came in cold and mean, and with it came the elk. Ethan spotted the tracks 2 miles north of the cabin. A bull elk, massive judging by the hoofprints, traveling alone. Rare this time of year. The meat alone would feed them through the rest of winter and into spring. "I'm going after it," he told Mara over breakfast. She looked up from her coffee. "How long?" 2 days, maybe 3. Depends on how far it ranges." He was already mentally packing, dried meat, extra ammunition, his heaviest coat. "You'll be fine here. We've got plenty of wood and food." "I'm coming with you." "No." "Yes." She set down her cup. "You've been teaching me to hunt. This is part of it." "This is different. Elk hunting in winter means sleeping rough, tracking for miles through deep snow. It's hard." "I know. Everything up here is hard." She stood, moved to gather her gear. "I'm not asking permission, Ethan. I'm telling you I'm coming." He wanted to argue, wanted to tell her it was too dangerous, too difficult, that he needed to know she was safe in the cabin. But looking at her face, determined, already pulling on her boots, he knew it would be a waste of breath. "Fine. But you follow my lead. No arguments, no hesitation. I say move, you move." "Deal." They set out an hour later, following the elk's trail into the high country. The tracks were fresh, less than a day old. The bull was moving steadily northeast, toward the canyon lands where the wind kept some ground clear of snow. Mara kept pace better than Ethan expected. She'd grown stronger over the weeks, her body adapting to the constant physical demands of mountain life. Where she'd once struggled with the thin air at altitude, she now climbed without complaint. By late afternoon, they'd covered 8 miles. The elk's trail led them into a narrow valley between 2 ridges. Ethan called a halt, studying the terrain. "We'll make camp here, track him fresh in the morning." They built a lean-to against a rock face, using pine branches and Ethan's oilcloth tarp. The fire was small, carefully positioned to reflect heat off the rock. Ethan had taught Mara that trick weeks ago, how to make a little warmth go a long way. "Tell me about the first time you hunted elk," Mara said, while they ate jerky and hard biscuits. "I was 19, cocky as hell, thought I knew everything." Ethan poked at the fire. "Tracked one for 3 days, finally got close enough for a shot. Missed, spooked the whole herd." "What did you do?" "Tracked them another 2 days. Nearly froze to death doing it." He smiled at the memory. "Finally brought one down. Felt like I'd conquered the world." "And now?" "Now I know the world doesn't get conquered, just survived, one day at a time." She leaned against him, sharing warmth. "You're not as pessimistic as you pretend to be." "I'm exactly as pessimistic as I pretend to be. You're just optimistic enough for both of us." "Someone has to be." She was quiet for a moment. "What happens after winter, when the snow clears and the Kellers can move freely again?" "We deal with it." "That's not a plan." "It's the only plan I've got." He wrapped his arm around her shoulders. "I'm not giving you up, Mara. Not to them, not to anyone. Whatever it takes. Even if it means leaving here? The cabin? The mountain?" Ethan had thought about that. Thought about it more than he wanted to admit. This place had been his refuge for 15 years. The idea of abandoning it felt like losing a limb. "Even then," he said, "if it comes to that." She kissed him, soft and brief. "I hope it doesn't come to that." "So do I." They slept in shifts, taking turns keeping the fire going. The night was brutally cold, the kind that made your lungs hurt with each breath. Ethan woke from his second sleep to find Mara standing at the edge of their camp, rifle in hand, staring out at the darkness. "What's wrong?" "Thought I heard something, probably just wind." But she didn't lower the rifle. Ethan joined her, listening. The forest at night had its own language. Branches creaking, snow falling from overloaded pines, small animals moving through the underbrush. He filtered through the sounds, searching for anything that didn't belong. There. A horse's snort, quickly muffled. Too far to pinpoint exactly, but close enough to hear. "We're not alone," he said quietly. Mara's grip tightened on the rifle. The Kellers? Or someone else tracking the same elk? He moved back to the fire, began kicking snow over it. Either way, we can't stay here. They packed in the dark, moving with practiced efficiency. Ethan led them up the ridge, away from the sound. The going was treacherous. Loose rock hidden under snow, drop-offs on either side. One wrong step meant a fall that would break bones, or worse. Behind them, voices echoed up from the valley. Men, multiple of them, not bothering to be quiet. "There's their fire! Check the camp. See if the bitch is with him." Ethan pushed faster, pulling Mara along. They crested the ridge just as moonlight broke through the clouds. Below, he could see their abandoned camp and 4 men on horseback picking through it. "They followed us," Mara breathed. "Keep moving." Ethan kept his voice low. "They've got horses, but horses can't go where we're going." He led her down the far side of the ridge into terrain that would make a mountain goat nervous. Steep slopes, loose shale, narrow paths along cliff faces. Behind them, the voices grew fainter as the Kellers realized their horses couldn't follow. They walked for 2 more hours, putting distance between them and pursuit. Finally, Ethan found a cave. Barely more than an overhang, but defensible and out of the wind. They collapsed inside, both breathing hard. "Why?" Mara asked when she could speak. "Why chase us this far? I'm not worth it." "It's not about worth. It's about power." Ethan checked his ammunition. "You challenged them, escaped them, made them look weak. They can't let that stand." "So this ends with them dead or us dead?" Probably." She laughed, bitter and sharp. "Hell of a courtship. You want poetry and flowers? You picked the wrong hermit." But he reached over, squeezed her hand. "I meant what I said. I'm not letting them take you. Even if it costs you everything? Everything I've got is right here." He gestured at the cave, at her, at the rifle across his lap. "The rest is just stuff." They dozed fitfully until dawn. Ethan woke to gray light and the sound of Mara's breathing, still asleep against his shoulder. For a moment, he just watched her, the way her face had softened with sleep, the way her hand rested on his chest like she was anchoring herself to him. When had this happened? When had one impulsive rescue turned into this? Into caring about someone more than his own safety? Into being willing to fight a war over a woman he'd known for barely 2 months? Mara's eyes opened. "You're staring," thinking. "About? How much easier my life would be if I just kept walking that day in town." She sat up, studied his face. "Regret it?" "No." And he meant it. Not for a second. "Good." She stretched, wincing at stiff muscles. "Because we've got company." Ethan heard it then, voices below, closer than he liked. He moved to the cave entrance, peered down. 3 men working their way up the slope, tracking them. Jack and Cole Keller, plus the nervous young one from before. 4th one's probably circling around, Ethan muttered. "Basic flanking." "What do we do?" "We go up." He pointed toward the ridge above them. "There's a pass at the top, narrow, easy to defend. We get there first, we control the high ground." "And the elk?" "Forget the elk. Right now, we're the ones being hunted." They climbed. Ethan's injured leg from an old fall screamed protest, the one souvenir from his youth that never fully healed. He'd learned to ignore it over the years, but 2 days of hard tracking followed by a night in the cold had stiffened it badly. He limped more than he wanted to admit. Mara noticed. "You're hurt." "I'm fine." "Don't lie. I can see you favoring that leg." "Old injury, acts up in cold weather." He kept climbing, refusing to slow down. "I'll manage." They reached the pass around midday. Ethan immediately saw the problem. Yes, it was defensible, but it was also a trap. One way in, one way out. If the Kellers got both ends covered, they'd be pinned. "We need to keep moving," he said. But Mara was looking past him, her face gone pale. "Ethan." He turned. The 4th man, the one they'd expected to flank them, stood 50 yards away on the far side of the pass. He had a rifle trained on them. "Don't move," the man shouted. "Mr. Keller wants to talk." "Tell Mr. Keller to go to hell," Ethan called back. "Can't do that. He's paying me $5 to bring you both back alive." The man looked young, maybe 25, with the desperate edge of someone who needed that $5 badly. "I don't want trouble. Just come peaceful and nobody gets hurt." "You believe that?" Ethan asked Mara quietly. Not even a little bit. Me neither. He raised his voice. We're not going anywhere. You want us, you'll have to take us. The young man's rifle wavered. Behind them, Ethan heard boots on rock. The Kellers closing in from below. Minutes now, maybe seconds. Last chance, the young man said. Ethan's hand went to his pistol. Not to draw, not yet. Just ready. That's when the elk burst through the tree line. The bull came at a full run, spooked by something and heading straight through the pass. Massive antlers, easily 6 points, 1,200 pounds of panicked animal. The young man spun toward the sound, rifle swinging. Move! Ethan shoved Mara toward the rocks as the elk thundered past. The young man fired, missed. The elk slammed into him and Ethan heard bones crack. The man went down screaming, his rifle skittering across the ice. Go! Ethan pushed Mara ahead of him as the Kellers' shouts echoed up from below. They ran, slipping and sliding down the far side of the pass. Behind them, the elk crashed back into the forest, having thoroughly disrupted everyone's plans. Ethan's leg gave out halfway down. He stumbled, caught himself on a tree, but the damage was done. His knee had swollen to twice its normal size. When he tried to put weight on it, white-hot pain shot up his thigh. Ethan! Mara grabbed him before he fell. Keep going. I'll slow them down. Buy you time. Like hell. She got under his arm, took his weight. We go together or not at all? Mara, I can't. I said we go together. Her voice carried the same steel that had made her threaten to bite Cole Keller's fingers off. Now shut up and lean on me. They made it another mile before the Kellers caught up. Ethan heard them coming, not trying to be quiet anymore, just pushing hard. He found a spot between two large boulders, defensible but not by much. This is it, he said. Can't go any farther. Mara helped him down, then took up position beside him. She had the rifle, he had his pistol, 17 rounds between them. Probably not enough. I'm sorry, Ethan said. Should have sent you away weeks ago. Stop apologizing for the best decision you ever made. She checked the rifle's load. We've had 2 months. Some people don't get that much. Should have been longer. Yeah, should have. She looked at him, and her eyes were bright. But I'm glad we had what we had. The Kellers appeared through the trees. Jack and Cole, both armed, both looking murderous. They stopped 30 yards away, using the trees for cover. End of the line, Crow, Jack called. Give us the woman and you can walk away. Go to hell, Ethan called back. You're hurt. Can't run anymore. Can't win. Jack stepped out slightly. Be smart. She's not worth dying for. Ethan looked at Mara, bruised and exhausted and absolutely refusing to break. She's worth everything. He raised his pistol and fired. Missed. His hand was shaking from cold and pain, but it sent the Kellers diving for cover. Return fire came immediately. Bullets sparked off the rocks around them. Ethan fired twice more, forcing them to stay down. Beside him, Mara sighted carefully and squeezed the trigger. Cole Keller screamed. He staggered out from behind his tree, clutching his shoulder where blood was spreading fast. You bitch! Jack raised his rifle. Ethan fired again. This time he didn't miss. Jack went down hard, clutching his leg, but Cole was still standing, still raising his gun with his good arm. Ethan, Mara started to say. The rifle crack was deafening. But Cole's gun hadn't fired. Someone else had. Cole collapsed. Through the trees, Ethan saw a figure on horseback. Older man, weathered face, holding a smoking rifle. Then more riders appeared. 6 of them, all armed. Tom Breslin, the blacksmith. Sarah Mitchell's husband. 4 others Ethan recognized from town. They formed a line between the Kellers and the boulders. That's enough, Tom Breslin said. His voice carried absolute authority. This ends now. Jack, still on the ground bleeding, snarled up at him. You have no right. I have every right. We all do. Tom gestured at the others. You've terrorized this town for 10 years, murdered our sheriff, run off decent people, turned Black Hollow Ridge into your personal kingdom. We're done with it. You'll hang for this, Jack spat. Maybe, but you'll be dead first, so you won't see it. Tom dismounted, walked over to where Jack lay. Here's what's going to happen. You and your brother are going to leave. Tonight. Take your ranch and your men and go somewhere that'll tolerate you. Because we won't. Not anymore. The law is 6 men with rifles saying you're done. Tom's voice went cold. You can accept that and live, or you can fight and die. Choose. Jack looked at his brother, bleeding and unconscious, looked at the 6 armed men, looked at Ethan and Mara, still standing despite everything. This isn't over, he said. Yes, it is. Sarah Mitchell's husband stepped forward. We found the young man you hired. Took him to Doc Morrison. He told us everything, how you've been hunting them for days, how you plan to kill them both and make it look like an accident. That's attempted murder. We've got a witness. Jack's face twisted with rage, but he stayed silent. Tom gestured to 2 of the men. Get them on horses, escort them to the county line, make sure they keep going. As they hauled the Kellers away, Tom walked over to Ethan and Mara. You look like hell, both of you. Feel worse. Ethan tried to stand, failed. His leg wouldn't support any weight. Sarah sent supplies, medicine, food, extra blankets. Tom helped him up, got him settled on one of the spare horses. Said you'd probably need them. Why? Mara asked. Why help us? Because somebody had to. Tom looked at her directly. And because you're not the first person the Kellers have destroyed. Just the first one who survived long enough for us to grow a spine. They made it back to the cabin by nightfall. Tom and another man helped Ethan inside, while Sarah Mitchell, who'd come with the rescue party, took charge of Mara. You're hypothermic, Sarah said, wrapping Mara in blankets. And half-starved. When's the last time you ate? Yesterday morning, maybe. Sarah made soup while Tom examined Ethan's leg. Knee's torn up pretty bad. You need to stay off it for weeks, maybe months. Can't do that. You don't have a choice. Put weight on it now. You'll cripple yourself permanently. Tom wrapped it tight with strips of cloth. You're lucky you've got someone to help. Can't imagine doing this alone. Ethan looked across the cabin at Mara, drinking soup and looking like she might fall asleep mid-sip. Yeah, lucky. The rescue party stayed that night, posting guards in case the Kellers doubled back. But dawn came quiet, and the scouts reported fresh tracks heading east. The Kellers were gone. They'll be back someday, Tom warned before leaving. Men like that don't forget. Let them come. Ethan was flat on his back, leg propped up, hating every second of his helplessness. Next time we'll be ready. Next time you'll have help. Tom tipped his hat. Town's changing, Crow. Might be worth coming down more often. See it for yourself. After they left, Mara collapsed beside the bed. I can't believe they came, that they actually helped. People surprise you sometimes. Ethan reached down, brushed hair from her face. You surprised me. How? You saved my life. That shot you made, Cole would have killed me. You saved mine first. I was just returning the favor. She caught his hand, held it. We're even now. No, I'm still ahead. You dragged me down that mountain when I couldn't walk. Then I'm ahead because you taught me to shoot in the first place. We could do this all day. We could. She climbed onto the bed beside him, careful of his leg. Or we could just accept that we saved each other and leave it at that. Ethan pulled her close. They lay there as the fire burned low, both too exhausted to move. Outside, the wind picked up, more snow coming, but inside the cabin, wrapped around each other, neither of them cared. Ethan, Mara said sleepily. Yeah? Thank you for not walking away that day. Thank you for being worth not walking away from. She was already asleep. Ethan listened to her breathing, felt the weight of her against his chest. His leg throbbed. His whole body ached. They'd almost died today, multiple times, and he'd never felt more alive. Spring, when it finally came, would bring new challenges. The Kellers were gone, but probably not forever. His leg might never fully heal. The town might decide they were more trouble than they were worth. But right now, in this moment, Ethan Crow had everything that mattered. A roof over his head, a woman he loved in his arms, and a future that finally felt worth fighting for. The ghosts he'd been running from were still there. They probably always would be. But for the first time in 15 years, they weren't the only company he kept. And that made all the difference. The weeks that followed were harder than the hunt had been. Ethan's leg healed slowly, reluctantly, like it resented being asked to work again. He spent most of March flat on his back or hobbling around the cabin with a crutch Tom Breslin had carved for him. The inactivity made him mean. I should be checking the traps, he growled on a morning when rain hammered the roof. Thunder rolled across the valley, shaking the windows. The traps are fine. Mara didn't look up from the venison she was cutting into strips for drying. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency now. Nothing like the fumbling city girl who'd arrived months ago. I checked them yesterday. You're doing too much. Someone has to. You certainly can't. She pointed the knife at him, and there was steel in her eyes. Stop complaining. You sound like a child. I sound like a man who's tired of being useless. You're not useless. You're healing. She set down the knife, wiped her hands on her apron, one she'd sewn herself from spare fabric, another skill she'd taught herself out of necessity. And you're driving me insane with the self-pity. I'm not. You are. Every single day it's the same thing. I should be hunting. I should be chopping wood. I should be doing everything myself. She crossed her arms, fixing him with a look that would have made a lesser man wither. You took me in when I couldn't do anything, when I was half dead and couldn't even feed myself. Let me return the favor without the constant guilt. Ethan opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. She was right. He'd been insufferable for weeks, snapping at her for every kindness, resenting his own weakness more than he'd ever resented anything. I'm not good at accepting help, he said finally, his voice quieter. I noticed. Her expression softened, the anger draining out of it. But you're going to have to learn. That leg won't support full weight for another month at least. Doc Morrison said so when Tom brought him up here last week. Tom said weeks. Tom's an optimist. Doc Morrison's a realist. She came over, sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress dipped under her slight weight. Listen, I know this is hard. I know you're used to doing everything yourself, being completely self-reliant. But we're partners now. That means letting me carry the weight sometimes. Partners. He tested the word, rolling it around in his mouth like something unfamiliar. That's what we are, aren't we? She took his hand, and her palm was calloused now from work. Unless you've got a better word for it. Ethan thought about the past 3 months, about everything they'd survived together, the starvation, the Kellers, the hunt that had nearly killed them both, about the way she fit against him at night, the way her laugh had started to fill the cabin's corners, driving out ghosts he'd thought were permanent residents. No, he said, partners works. Good. She kissed him, quick and firm. Then shut up and let your partner handle the traps. She was gone before he could respond, out into the rain with her coat and his rifle. Ethan lay there listening to the door close, feeling useless and grateful in equal measure. Through the window, he watched her disappear into the tree line, moving with a confidence that still surprised him. She'd grown into the mountain like a native plant, adapting to survive. The rain continued all day. Ethan spent it doing what little he could, sharpening knives, organizing supplies, reading. But mostly he thought about what came next. Winter was ending. Spring would bring new challenges, and somewhere out there, the Kellers were licking their wounds and probably planning revenge. Mara returned at dusk, soaked through but triumphant. She'd caught 2 rabbits and a fox. The fox pelt would fetch good money in town, or would have if either of them planned to go back to town anytime soon. We need to talk about that, Mara said after she'd changed into dry clothes and they were eating rabbit stew. About town. What about it? We can't avoid it forever. You need to see Doc Morrison about that leg. We need supplies we can't make or trap. And she hesitated. And people are asking questions. Tom says the whole town's buzzing about what happened with the Kellers. Let them buzz. Ethan, she set down her bowl. They drove the Kellers out because of us. Because they decided to stand up and help. We owe them something. At least an appearance, a thank you, something that shows we're not just hiding up here. He knew she was right, had known it for weeks. But the thought of going back to town, of facing all those eyes and questions and expectations, made his chest tight. I'll think about it, he said. Think fast. Tom's coming back in a few days with supplies and news. He'll want an answer. April brought warmer weather and the promised visitor. Ethan was outside for the first time in weeks, testing his leg on short walks around the cabin when he heard a horse approaching. His hand went to the pistol at his belt, old habit and one that would probably never die, but relaxed when he recognized the rider. Tom Breslin dismounted, leading a pack horse loaded with supplies. Behind him came another rider, Doc Morrison, a lean man in his 50s with sharp eyes and gentle hands. "Heard you might be mobile again," Tom said. "Thought I'd check. And bring reinforcements. Mobile's a strong word. I can walk without falling over, most days." Ethan gestured toward the cabin. "Coffee's hot if you want some." Inside, Mara greeted them with genuine warmth. She'd taken to Tom and his wife, the first real friends she'd had in years. While she poured coffee, Doc Morrison examined Ethan's leg with professional thoroughness that made Ethan want to punch him. "Knee's healing, but you did serious damage," Morrison said, probing the swollen joint. "You'll walk fine eventually, but running's probably done. And you'll feel every storm coming for the rest of your life." "Fantastic," Ethan muttered. "Could be worse. Could have lost the leg entirely." Morrison began rewrapping it with fresh bandages. "Keep off it as much as possible for another month. After that, start gentle exercise. Walking, not hunting. Let it rebuild strength slowly." "Month's a long time. So's the rest of your life. You want to spend it limping, push too hard too fast." Morrison stood, wiped his hands. "I'm not asking, Crow. I'm telling you. One more month or you'll regret it." After Morrison's examination, Tom pulled packages from his saddlebag. Most were supplies: flour, salt, coffee, sugar, but one was different. "Sarah sent preserves," Tom said, setting 3 jars on the table. "Said you'd earned them after the winter you had. And there's mail. Came through last week." Ethan's stomach clenched. Mail meant only one thing: a letter from Rachel about Emma. He'd been sending his own letters for 2 months now, awkward attempts at being a father again from a distance. So far he'd received nothing back, and the silence had been eating at him. Tom handed him a thick envelope. Denver postmark. Ethan's hands shook slightly as he opened it. 2 letters fell out. One in Rachel's neat handwriting. One in a younger, less practiced script that made his throat tight. He opened Rachel's first. "Ethan, Emma's been asking about you constantly since your first letter arrived. I won't lie to you. She was angry at first. 15 years of silence will do that to a person. She threw the letter across the room, called you names I won't repeat, and refused to read the others for 2 weeks. But eventually, curiosity won out. She read your letters over and over, and gradually the anger turned into something else. Confusion, hurt, but also curiosity. She has questions, so many questions, and she wants to meet you. This summer, if you're willing. She's 17 now, Ethan, nearly grown. You've missed so much, but there's still time to know her if you want it. Let me know. Rachel." Ethan set that aside and picked up the second letter with trembling fingers. Emma's handwriting was careful, deliberate, like she'd written and rewritten each word. "Dear Father, I don't know what to call you. Father feels strange for someone I don't remember at all. But Mr. Crow feels wrong too, like you're a stranger when you're supposed to be family. Rachel says I should just be honest with you, so here it is. I'm confused and angry, and also curious, which makes me even more angry, because I don't want to care about you, but I do. You left when I was 3 years old. I don't remember you at all. Not your face, not your voice, nothing. Rachel has shown me photographs, but you're just a stranger in old pictures. But your letters sound like someone who's sorry, someone who's trying. And I guess that's something. Maybe not enough, but something. I have questions. A lot of questions about my mother, about why you left, about what you've been doing for 15 years while I grew up without you. Rachel says I can visit this summer if you agree to it. I'd like that. I think. I'm not making any promises about what happens after, but I'd like to at least meet you. See if you're real or just another disappointment." Emma Ethan read it twice, then a third time. Each word felt like a small knife, cutting and healing simultaneously. Mara was watching him, and when he finally looked up, she had tears in her eyes. "She wants to see you," Mara said softly. "She's angry. She has every right to be angry." He set the letter down carefully, like it might disintegrate. "What if I make it worse? What if I say the wrong thing, or she realizes I'm not worth forgiving, or then you'll apologize and try again?" Mara came around the table, squeezed his shoulder. "Stop looking for reasons to run, Ethan. Your daughter is giving you a chance. That's more than you had yesterday. Take it." Tom cleared his throat, diplomatically pretending he hadn't been listening to every word. "There's something else. About the town. About what's been happening since the Kellers left. Ethan looked up, grateful for the distraction from his spiraling thoughts. What about it? We held an election. A real one, not the rigged nonsense the Kellers used to run. Tom's face lit up with pride. Got ourselves a new sheriff. Young man named Anderson came from Montana. Honest as they come, not afraid of hard work or harder men. And we elected a new town council. Fair election, everyone got a vote, even the women. Women can't vote, Ethan said automatically. They can in Black Hollow Ridge. We made our own rules. Tom grinned. Sarah's on the council. She's already making noise about building a real school, not just the one-room shack we've been using. Black Hollow Ridge doesn't have enough kids for a school. It will. People are coming back, Ethan. Families that left when the Kellers took over, they're hearing it's safe again. We've got 3 new homesteads started this spring, 2 more planned for summer. Young couples looking for a fresh start. Tom leaned forward. The town's changing, growing, becoming what it should have been all along. Mara leaned forward, her coffee forgotten. A real school needs a real teacher. That's actually why I'm here. Well, one of the reasons. Tom looked at her directly. Sarah thought you might be interested in the teaching position. Me? Mara laughed, but it sounded uncertain. I barely have formal education myself. I can read and write, but I'm not qualified to teach. You can read and write better than half the town. You've got patience. Anyone who can live with this grouch for 3 months and not murder him has infinite patience. Tom ignored Ethan's glare. And the kids need someone who won't break under pressure. Someone who knows what it's like to fight for survival and come out stronger. Sarah thinks you're perfect for it. I don't know the first thing about teaching children. Neither did the last 3 people who tried it. One lasted 2 weeks before the kids drove her off. Another fell in love with a prospector and left town. Third one couldn't handle the isolation. Tom pulled out another paper, unfolded it carefully. Town council approved the position yesterday. Salary's not much, $20 a month. But it comes with a small house near the schoolhouse. You'd have your own place. Independence. Mara looked at Ethan. He could see the war in her eyes, the desire for purpose, for meaning, fighting with the fear of leaving what they'd built here in the safety of isolation. Your own place, Ethan repeated slowly, testing how the words felt. Not here. Well, you 2 aren't married. Town's progressive, but not that progressive. Tom shifted uncomfortably. Though I suppose that could change if you wanted it to, if you decided to make things official. I'll think about it, Mara said quickly, cutting off whatever Ethan had been about to say. The teaching position. Let me think about it. After Tom and Doc Morrison left, promising to return in 2 weeks, they didn't talk about it. Not that day or the next. But it hung between them like smoke. The question of what came next, now that survival wasn't consuming every waking moment. Now that they had the luxury of thinking about the future instead of just the next meal, the next threat, the next disaster. Ethan watched Mara over the following days. Saw her looking at the letter from Tom, reading and rereading the details about the teaching position. Saw her standing at the cabin window, staring down at the valley where town lay hidden in the trees. Saw the restlessness creeping back into her, the same restlessness that had probably driven her west in the first place. Finally, a week later, Mara brought it up while they were eating dinner. The sun was setting, painting the cabin's interior in shades of gold and amber. I want to take the job, she said without preamble. Ethan set down his fork carefully. Okay. Okay? That's all you're going to say? What do you want me to say? It's a good opportunity. You'd be helping people, building something that matters. Teaching children is important work. It means moving to town, living separately. She was watching him carefully, trying to read his reaction. We'd see each other, but not like this. Not every day. I know what it means. He met her eyes. Do you want to stay here instead? Mara looked around the cabin, the space that had been shelter and prison and home all at once, the walls Ethan had built with his own hands, the fireplace where they'd sat countless nights reading and talking and learning each other's stories, the bed where they'd found comfort and passion and safety. Part of me does, she admitted. This is where we found each other, where I learned to be strong again, where you learned to care again. This place saved my life. But I can't spend my whole life hiding on a mountain, As much as I love it here, as much as I love... She stopped, swallowed hard. I need to be part of the world again. Need to matter to more than just one person. Need to prove that I'm more than what the Kellers tried to make me. You matter to me. You've always mattered to me. I know. And you matter to me more than I can put into words. But that can't be all there is. She reached across the table, took his hand. Can it? Can we build a whole life around just the two of us and nothing else? Ethan thought about Caroline, about how his whole world had revolved around her and Emma, how when they were gone he'd had nothing left to stand on. About 15 years of isolation because he'd been too afraid to build anything that could be taken away. About the emptiness of a life lived entirely in reaction to loss. No, he said quietly. It can't be all there is. You're right. You need more than this cabin and a broken hermit. You're not broken. Not anymore. Her grip on his hand tightened. But I need to know I can stand on my own, that I'm choosing to be with you, not just clinging to you because I have nowhere else to go. So you'll let me go. I'll help you go, support you. He squeezed her hand back. And I'll be here when you need a place to escape to. This cabin will always be here, and so will I. Just here? Not in town? Now came the harder part. The part he'd been avoiding thinking about since Tom had first mentioned the teaching position. I don't know if I can live in town again, Mara. Too many people, too much noise, too many memories of who I used to be. This mountain's been my home for too long. I'm not sure I know how to be anywhere else. Even if it means being alone again? I won't be alone. You'll visit. I'll visit. We'll figure it out. He tried to smile. And Emma's coming this summer. That's more people in my life than I've had in years. That's enough. Mara's eyes were wet now, tears threatening to spill over. I don't want to lose you. I don't want us to drift apart because we're living separate lives. You won't lose me. Distance isn't the same as gone. He stood, pulled her into his arms, felt her melt against him. We survived the Kellers trying to kill us. We can survive a few miles of separation. Promise? I promise to try. That's the best I can do. That's all anyone can do. She buried her face in his chest, and he felt her tears soaking through his shirt. I'm scared. Good. Fear keeps you honest, keeps you careful. He kissed the top of her head, breathed in the scent of pine and wood smoke that clung to her hair. But don't let it stop you from living. Don't let it make you small. They stood there for a long time, holding each other while the sun finished setting and darkness crept into the cabin. Neither of them moved to light the lamps. Sometimes darkness felt safer. Mara moved to town in early May, when the mountain flowers were blooming and the air smelled like possibility. Ethan helped her settle into the small house behind the schoolhouse. One room with a sleeping loft, but bright and clean with a real stove and glass windows that weren't cracked. Sarah Mitchell had already stocked it with basics: flour, beans, coffee, lamp oil. You'll do fine, Ethan said, setting down the last of her belongings. It wasn't much. Some clothes, a few books she'd borrowed from his collection, the quilt she'd sewn over the winter from scraps. Will I? Mara looked around the empty space, and he could see panic creeping into her eyes. 3 months ago, I was sleeping in a church basement, being hunted by the Kellers. Now I'm supposed to teach children how to read and write and become decent human beings. What do I know about raising children? 3 months ago, you could barely hold a rifle without shaking. Now you can outshoot half the men in this territory. He turned her to face him, hands on her shoulders. You're stronger than you think. You always have been. You just needed the chance to prove it. I learned from the best. You learned from a stubborn hermit who was too broken to know better. He touched her face gently. The strength was always yours, Mara. I just gave you a safe place to find it. They kissed, and it felt like goodbye, even though it wasn't supposed to be. When Ethan finally made himself leave, climbing onto Ruth's back for the ride back up the mountain, Mara stood in her doorway watching. She didn't wave. Neither did he. They both knew that if they acknowledged the leaving, it would hurt too much. The cabin felt catastrophically wrong without her. Too quiet, too empty, too full of ghosts that had been dormant for months, but came roaring back the moment he was alone again. Ethan tried to fall back into his old routines, hunting at dawn, reading in the afternoon, maintaining the cabin and his trap lines. But none of it fit anymore. Reading by the fire wasn't the same without someone to argue with about Thoreau's hypocrisy. Hunting felt pointless when there was only himself to feed. Even sleep was difficult. The bed felt too big, too cold, too empty. He made it exactly 3 days before he saddled Ruth and rode back to town. He told himself he needed supplies, told himself it was practical, sensible, not at all desperate. He was lying to himself and knew it. Mara was in the schoolhouse when he arrived, preparing lessons for the first day of class. The building was small but well built, with large windows to let in light and a potbelly stove for winter. She'd already started transforming it, desks arranged in neat rows, a chalkboard mounted on the wall covered in practice letters, books stacked on shelves. She must have built herself. She looked up when he walked in and her face lit up in a way that made his chest physically ache. "Couldn't stay away?" she asked, but there was no judgment in it, just hope. "Needed supplies, figured I'd check on you while I was here." Liar. She set down her chalk, wiped her hands on her apron. "You missed me." "Maybe a little." "A lot." She crossed the room, kissed him with a hunger that suggested she'd been just as miserable alone as he had. "I missed you too. The house is too quiet. I kept waking up expecting you to be there, and you weren't." "Cabin's worse. Everything in it reminds me of you." They stood there, foreheads touching, both acknowledging the difficulty of what they'd chosen without quite knowing how to fix it. "This is going to be harder than we thought," Mara said softly. "Yeah. But we'll make it work. We have to. I'm not losing you, not after everything." She pulled back enough to look at him properly. "How's the leg?" "Better. I can walk without the crutch now. Still aches, probably always will, but it works." "Good. That's good." She gestured at the schoolhouse. "Want to see what I've done?" He spent the next hour listening to her talk about lesson plans and primers and her strategy for teaching children of different ages in one room. She was nervous. He could hear it in her voice, but also excited, passionate. This mattered to her in a way that hunting and survival never quite could. "You're going to be good at this," he said when she finally ran out of words. "I hope so. The town's trusting me with their children. That's—" She shook her head. "That's terrifying." "Terrifying means it matters. If you weren't scared, you wouldn't care enough." "Is that what you tell yourself, when you're scared?" "Every day. Fear's kept me alive this long. Figure it's doing something right." Over the following weeks, they found a rhythm that almost worked. Ethan came to town twice a week, officially for supplies, actually to see Mara. She rode up to the cabin every Sunday, spending the day hiking and talking and reminding him what it felt like to not be entirely alone. They were careful not to give the town too much to gossip about. Mara stayed in her house, Ethan in the boarding house when he visited. Everything proper and respectable on the surface. But everyone knew. The town had eyes and ears and opinions, and they weren't shy about sharing them. "People are talking," Sarah Mitchell said one afternoon when Ethan stopped by the general store. "About you and Mara." "People always talk." "True enough, but these particular people want to know your intentions." Sarah sorted through mail with practiced efficiency. "She's the school teacher now. That makes her a respectable member of the community. If you're just using her—" "I'm not using her." "Then what are you doing?" Sarah fixed him with a look that reminded him uncomfortably of his own mother. "Because from where the town sits, you're keeping her in limbo. Not married, not courting properly, just existing in some halfway state that doesn't fit anywhere. We're figuring it out. Figure it faster. She deserves better than uncertainty." Sarah handed him his mail, another letter from Rachel, thicker this time. "And so do you, Ethan Crow. You've been half dead for 15 years. Don't waste the chance to be fully alive." The letter from Rachel contained details about Emma's visit. She'd arrive in mid-July, stay for 2 weeks, and Rachel would accompany her. The letter also contained a warning. "She's nervous, Ethan. Terrified, actually. She hides it well, but I can see it. She's built up this image of you in her head, partly from my stories, partly from her own imagination, partly from anger and hurt. No matter what you do or say, you won't match that image. You'll disappoint her somehow. The question is whether you'll disappoint her in a way she can forgive. Be honest with her. She can handle truth better than she can handle pretty lies. Rachel." Ethan read the letter 3 times, then rode up to the cabin and wrote a response. It took him 4 attempts before he got the words right. "Rachel,
Tell Emma I'm scared too. Tell her I don't know how to be a father anymore, if I ever really knew how.
Tell her I'll answer any question she has, even if the answers make me look bad. Tell her I'm sorry. I know I've said it before, but I'll keep saying it until she believes I mean it. Or until she tells me to stop, whichever comes first. I'm looking forward to meeting the woman she's become, even if I don't deserve the privilege. Ethan. He mailed the letter the next day, then told Mara about Emma's impending visit. She'll stay at the cabin, he said. They were sitting on Mara's small porch, watching the town settle in for the evening. There's more space there, and Rachel's coming too. I can't exactly put them up in the boarding house. And where will I be during all this? Wherever you want to be. He took her hand. I'd like you to meet her, if you're willing, but I understand if that's too much too fast. Your daughter coming to meet the woman who's sleeping with her father? Mara laughed softly. Yeah, that won't be awkward at all. We haven't... He stumbled over the words. Ethan, we share a bed whenever we get the chance. The whole town knows it. Pretending otherwise is just lying to ourselves. She squeezed his hand. I'm not ashamed of what we have. Are you? No, but Emma might be. Might think I replaced her mother too easily. Did you replace her? No. Caroline will always be... He stopped, searching for words that wouldn't sound like a betrayal to either woman. What I feel for you is different. Not better or worse. Just different. Caroline was my whole world, and when she died, the world ended. But you taught me there could be a new world. A different one. That doesn't make the old world less important. Mara was quiet for a moment. I'm not competing with a ghost, am I? No, I wouldn't do that to you. Good. Because I'd lose. Can't compete with memory. Memory gets to be perfect. Caroline wasn't perfect. She was stubborn and had a temper and could hold a grudge for months. She once didn't speak to me for a week because I forgot to feed her chickens. He smiled at the memory. But she was mine, and I was hers. And losing her broke something in me I thought could never be fixed. And now? Now I'm learning that broken things can still work. They just work differently. The conversation stayed with Ethan as he rode back to the cabin that night. He thought about Caroline, about Emma, about Mara and the strange new life he was building, about how 15 years of isolation had taught him absolutely nothing about how to balance multiple relationships, multiple loyalties, multiple versions of himself. He was still thinking about it when the Kellers returned. Ethan woke to the smell of smoke. For a moment he thought it was just the cabin's fireplace, a log that had rolled out onto the hearth. Then he realized the smell was wrong, not wood smoke, but something chemical. Oil, maybe, or kerosene. He was on his feet and reaching for his rifle before conscious thought caught up. Through the window he could see orange light flickering in the darkness. Not the cabin. Something outside. The barn. His small lean-to barn was fully engulfed, flames reaching 20 feet into the night sky. Ruth was screaming inside. He could hear her terror even from here. Ethan ran outside, leg protesting every step, and threw open the barn door. Heat blasted him backwards. Ruth was in her stall, kicking at the walls in panic, whites of her eyes showing. Easy, girl, easy. He grabbed a blanket, soaked it in the water trough, threw it over her head. Blind, she calmed just enough for him to get a rope on her halter and drag her out into the night. The barn was lost, too far gone to save. Ethan focused on getting Ruth away from the flames, getting her tied to a tree where she couldn't bolt. Only then did he look around for the cause. He found it carved into the dirt near the barn. Soon. One word. A promise and a threat. The Kellers hadn't forgotten. Hadn't forgiven. They'd just been waiting. Ethan spent the rest of the night watching the barn burn, rifle across his lap, waiting for them to return. They didn't. They'd made their point. They could reach him whenever they wanted, even here in his sanctuary. At dawn, he rode to town. Not to Mara, though he desperately wanted to. To the new sheriff. Anderson was young, maybe 30, with a lawman's eyes that saw everything and revealed nothing. He listened to Ethan's story without interruption, taking notes in a small leather book. The Kellers left town in February, Anderson said when Ethan finished. Headed east, or so the report said, but reports can be wrong. They're back, or they sent someone. Possibly, or you've got new enemies. Anderson closed his book. I'll look into it. In the meantime, watch yourself. Vary your routines. Don't make yourself an easy target. That's it? That's all you can do? Unless you saw who did it? Yes, that's all I can do. Anderson's expression softened slightly. I know that's not what you want to hear, but I can't arrest someone based on a word carved in dirt. I need evidence. Ethan wanted to argue, but he knew the man was right. Fine, I'll watch myself. He went to Mara next, found her in the schoolhouse, preparing for another day. Her face went pale when she saw him. What happened? He told her. Watched the fear creep back into her eyes, the same fear she'd had when she first arrived, before she'd learned to fight. They're coming for us, she said flatly. Maybe. Or they're just trying to scare us. It's working. She sat down hard on one of the student desks. I thought we were done with this. I thought they were gone. So did I. He crouched in front of her, took her hands. But we're not the same people we were in February. We're stronger now, smarter, and we're not alone. We've got the whole town on our side. The town can't protect us if the Kellers come in the night, can't watch us every moment. No, but we can watch each other. He squeezed her hands. I need you to be careful. Very when you walk to school. Don't go anywhere alone after dark. Keep that pistol I gave you close. You think they'll come after me specifically? I think they want to hurt me, and the best way to hurt me is through you. He met her eyes. So yes, be careful. The next week passed in tense vigilance. Ethan rebuilt the barn, this time with better sight lines and a lock on the door. He checked his cabin perimeter every morning and evening, looking for signs of intrusion. Slept with the rifle beside the bed and woke at every sound. In town, Mara did the same. Sarah Mitchell and some of the other women organized an informal watch, taking turns walking her home from school. Anderson increased patrols. The whole town tensed up, waiting for the other shoe to drop. It dropped on a Tuesday night. Ethan woke to Ruth's warning snort. He was up instantly, rifle in hand, moving to the window. 3 figures in the tree line, barely visible in the moonlight, watching the cabin. He didn't wait for them to make the first move. He fired a shot over their heads. A warning, not an attempt to kill. The figures scattered, disappearing into the forest. Ethan stayed at the window until dawn, watching, waiting. When full light came, he checked their tracks. 3 men, on foot, circled the cabin multiple times during the night, looking for weaknesses. Planning. This was reconnaissance. The real attack would come later. He rode to town and found Anderson. They're back. 3 of them, maybe more. Watched my cabin all night. Anderson swore quietly. You get a look at them? Too dark, but it's the Kellers. I'd bet my life on it. You might have to. Anderson stood, grabbed his gun belt. I'll ride up with you. See if we can track them. They found the tracks easily enough. 3 men who'd made camp about 2 miles from the cabin. Cold fire pit, signs they'd been there at least 2 days. But the camp was abandoned now, the trail leading east toward the territorial border. They're playing with you, Anderson said, studying the camp. Trying to make you paranoid, waiting for you to make a mistake. It's working. Don't let it. That's what they want. Anderson remounted his horse. I'll send word to the territorial marshal. Get some official eyes on this. In the meantime, maybe you should consider staying in town for a while. Safety in numbers. Can't do that. They'll just burn the cabin like they burned the barn. Better the cabin than you. Ethan didn't have a good answer for that. That evening, he talked to Mara about it. She'd finished teaching for the day, and they were in her small house, the door locked and curtains drawn. Anderson thinks I should move to town, he said. Do you want to? No, but I don't want to make you a target either. As long as I'm around, you're in danger. Mara set down the pot she'd been stirring and faced him fully. So what? You're going to leave? Run again? I'm trying to protect you. I don't need protecting. I need you to stop treating me like I'm fragile. Her voice hardened. We've been through this. I'm not that woman in the alley anymore. I'm not helpless. I know that. Do you? Because it sounds like you're making decisions for me instead of with me. He opened his mouth to argue, then stopped. She was right. Again, what do you want to do? I want to fight. If they're coming for us, I want to be ready. Want to make them regret ever looking in our direction. She moved closer. We beat them once. We can do it again. Last time we had help, an entire rescue party.
So we get help again. The town stood up once. They'll do it again. Her eyes flashed with the same defiance he'd seen that first day in the alley. I'm not running, Ethan. Not from them. Not from anything.
We make our stand here, or we make it nowhere. Looking at her, jaw set, eyes hard, every inch of her radiating determination, Ethan felt something shift in his chest. Not love, though that was there too. Something deeper. Pride, maybe. Or recognition. This woman had survived everything life threw at her and come out sharper for it. All right, he said, we fight. But we do it smart. Together. Together, she agreed. Always together. They spent the next week preparing. Ethan taught Mara advanced shooting positions, how to reload under pressure, how to use cover effectively. They practiced until she could hit a target at 70 yards more often than not, until the weight of the rifle felt natural in her hands and the kick didn't make her flinch. In town, Anderson quietly recruited volunteers, men who owed Ethan for past favors or who just hated bullies, or who believed in the new Black Hollow Ridge that was trying to be born. By the end of the week, they had 15 people committed to helping if the Kellers made their move. It's not an army, Anderson said, but it's enough to make them think twice. Emma arrived on July 15th, earlier than expected. Ethan was in town when the stage came in, and he stood frozen as a young woman descended. She had Caroline's dark hair and delicate features, but her height and gray eyes were pure crow. She wore a traveling dress that marked her as city folk, but she moved with confidence, scanning the small crowd until she found him. Their eyes met. For a moment, neither moved. 17 years of absence hung between them like a chasm too wide to cross. Then Rachel appeared behind Emma, gave her a gentle push, and Emma walked forward. "Hello," she said, and her voice cracked slightly. "Father." Emma. He didn't know whether to hug her or shake her hand, settled for standing there awkwardly until Emma made the decision for him, stepping in for a brief, stiff embrace. "You look different than the photographs," she said when they separated. "Older." "Yes, but also..." She studied his face. "Sadder." "That's probably accurate." He helped Rachel with her bags. "How was the journey?" "Long, uncomfortable. Rachel insisted we stop every 5 miles because she thought the coach was going to fall apart." "It was falling apart!" Rachel protested. "I saw the wheel wobble." Emma smiled slightly, and Ethan caught a glimpse of the girl she must have been, sharp-witted and unimpressed by drama. His daughter. The first dinner was excruciating. They sat in the cabin. Ethan had cleaned frantically for days, trying to make it presentable, and attempted conversation. Emma asked stilted questions about his life on the mountain. Ethan gave stilted answers. Rachel tried to mediate. Silences stretched like rubber bands pulled too tight. It was Mara who finally broke the tension. She'd insisted on making dinner, arriving early to cook while Ethan fetched Emma and Rachel from town. Now she set a pot of stew on the table with more force than necessary. "All right, that's enough." She fixed Ethan with a look. "Stop acting like she's a stranger at a business meeting. She's your daughter." "I'm trying." "Try harder." She turned to Emma. "And you. Stop waiting for him to be perfect. He's not perfect. He's a stubborn hermit who lived alone for 15 years and forgot how to talk to people. But he's trying." Emma's eyes widened. "Who are you?" "I'm Mara, the woman who lives with your father." She sat down, served herself stew with perfect calm. "Well, lived with him. Now I teach school in town and we see each other when we can. It's complicated." "Are you married?" Emma asked bluntly. "No." "But you're together?" "Yes." "That's..." Emma paused, searching for words. "Unusual." "So is everything else about your father?" "Get used to unusual." Mara took a bite of stew. "Now, let's start over. Emma, tell us about Denver. Real things, not polite small talk. What do you actually do with your time?" And somehow, impossibly, it worked. Emma relaxed slightly and started talking about her friends, about learning piano, about the books she'd been reading. Mara asked follow-up questions that actually showed interest, and Rachel joined in, and gradually the conversation started to flow. Ethan mostly listened, watching his daughter come alive when she talked about music, watching Mara draw her out with genuine curiosity. watching two women who should have been competitors or enemies instead finding common ground. After dinner, Rachel diplomatically announced she was tired and took herself to bed in the loft. Emma helped Mara wash dishes while Ethan banked the fire. "She's very direct," Emma said quietly, glancing at Mara. "That's one word for it." Mara dried a plate. "Your father would probably say obnoxiously blunt." "I can hear you," Ethan called from the fireplace. "Good. You should." Mara set down the plate, turned to Emma. "I know this is strange for you, finding out your father has a woman in his life. If you want to talk about it, about any of it, I'm available." "Are you in love with him?" The question hung in the air. Mara didn't answer immediately, and Ethan found himself holding his breath. "Yes," Mara said finally, "though I've never told him that directly. Seemed presumptuous." "Why, if it's true?" "Because love's a big word. Comes with expectations and promises. I'm not sure either of us is ready for that much weight." She started washing another dish. "But yes, I love him. For better or worse, I love your stubborn, damaged, occasionally impossible father." Emma was quiet for a moment. "My mother. Do you know about her?" "Some. Your father talks about her sometimes, when he's ready to." "Does it bother you, being compared to a dead woman?" "I'm not being compared. Your mother was your mother. I'm just Mara." She met Emma's eyes. "There's room for both of us in his heart. Love doesn't work like a pie that gets divided into smaller pieces. It expands to fit what it needs to hold." Emma smiled slightly. "You're strange." "I've been told." Mara handed her another dish to dry. "But I make your father happy, or at least less miserable. That has to count for something." Later, after Mara had gone back to town and Emma had joined Rachel in the loft, Ethan sat by the fire thinking about love and pies and the strange shape his life had taken, about the daughter who'd come back to him and the woman who'd pulled him back to life, about how all of it felt fragile and precious and terrifying. Tomorrow, he'd have to tell Emma about the Kellers, about the danger she'd walked into by coming here, about how her father's choices had made enemies that wouldn't stop until they'd extracted their pound of flesh. But tonight, for just a few more hours, he let himself pretend everything was fine. The next morning, Ethan told Emma everything. They sat on the porch while Rachel was still sleeping, and he laid it all out: the rescue, the hunt, the Kellers' return, the burned barn, the nighttime surveillance. Emma listened without interruption, her face growing progressively paler. "So you're saying we're in danger just being here," she said when he finished. "Possibly, probably." He couldn't lie to her. "I wanted to cancel your visit, but Rachel said you deserved the choice. And now that I know, now you choose. Stay, and we'll keep you safe as best we can. Leave, and I'll understand completely." Emma stared out at the mountains, thinking, "If I leave, they win. They get to drive you into isolation again." "Maybe, but you'd be safe." "Would Mara be safe?" "That's different." "Why? Because she's not your daughter?" Emma turned to look at him. "She loves you. You clearly love her, even if you're too stubborn to say it. The Kellers want to hurt you by hurting people you care about. That means anyone close to you is a target, which is why I should send you away, or why I should stay and fight." Emma's jaw set in a way that reminded Ethan painfully of Caroline. "I've had 17 years of being protected, being kept in the dark. I'm tired of it. If there's going to be trouble, I want to face it with my eyes open." "Emma, I'm not a child anymore, Father. Stop treating me like one." Her voice shook slightly but didn't break. "Tell me what you need me to do to help." What followed were two of the strangest weeks of Ethan's life. He split time between preparing for potential attack and learning to be a father again. Taught Emma to shoot. She was terrible at it, flinching every time, but she kept trying. Told her stories about Caroline that made them both cry. Introduced her to Mara properly, watching nervously as the two most important women in his life sized each other up. They didn't become instant friends, but they found a cautious respect. Emma appreciated Mara's bluntness. Mara appreciated Emma's intelligence. Both of them clearly loved Ethan, which created an awkward tension neither quite knew how to navigate. "This would be easier if I could hate her," Emma told Ethan one evening. "But she's too honest to hate. That's Mara's greatest strength and most annoying quality." "Do you love her?" "Yes." Have you told her? No. Emma shook her head. You're an idiot. I know. The attack came on Emma's 13th day. Ethan woke to Ruth's warning snort, now a familiar sound. But this time, when he looked out the window, he saw more than 3 figures. 7 men on horseback, surrounding the cabin in a loose circle. Get up, he called to the loft. We've got company. Rachel and Emma scrambled down. Emma's eyes were wide with fear, but she grabbed the rifle Ethan had taught her to use. Rachel moved to the back window, clutching a pistol. How many? Rachel asked. 7. Maybe more I can't see. Ethan checked his ammunition. Emma, you remember what I taught you about shooting through windows? Aim for center mass. Don't try for headshots. Good girl. One of the riders moved forward. Even in the pre-dawn darkness, Ethan recognized him. Jack Keller. Looking older, meaner, angrier than before. Crow, he shouted. We need to talk. Ethan cracked the door, rifle aimed at Jack's chest. Nothing to talk about. Get off my land. Can't do that. You've got something that belongs to us. I've got nothing of yours. That bitch Mara. She's ours. Always was. Jack's voice dripped venom. You took her, humiliated us, got us run out of our own town. Time to settle accounts. Mara's not here. Don't care. We'll take what you love instead. Burn your cabin, kill your horses, make you watch everything you've built turn to ash. Jack smiled. Then maybe we'll let you live with it. Let you feel what we felt. Ethan's finger tightened on the trigger. 1 shot, dead center. Jack would be dead before he hit the ground. But so would Ethan. The other 6 men would riddle the cabin with bullets. Father, Emma whispered behind him, there's more coming from the east. He looked. 3 more riders emerging from the trees, 10 total. They were outgunned and outmanned. If this turned into a firefight, they'd lose. That's when the shots came from the ridge above the cabin, not aimed at Ethan, aimed at the Kellers. Riders scattered as bullets tore through their ranks. 1 man fell from his horse, clutching his shoulder. Another's horse panicked and bolted. From the ridge, Ethan saw figures emerging. Tom Breslin with his rifle. Sarah Mitchell's husband. Anderson the sheriff. A dozen others from town, all armed, all shooting. The town had come to fight. The Kellers tried to regroup, but they were caught in crossfire now. Ethan from the cabin, the town from the ridge. 2 more men went down. The horses were screaming, panicking, throwing riders. Fall back, Jack screamed. Fall back. They ran. Ethan got off 2 more shots as they fled, didn't hit anything vital. Didn't matter. They were running, and that was enough. The shooting stopped. Silence rushed in to fill the space where chaos had been. Ethan stayed at the door, rifle ready, waiting for a trick. Tom Breslin appeared at the ridgeline, waved. They're gone. We're coming down. The next hour was controlled chaos. Anderson and Tom checked the fallen men. 2 dead, 1 wounded, badly enough to talk. The townfolk who'd come to help stood guard, rifles ready in case the Kellers returned. Rachel made coffee for everyone. Emma sat on the porch steps, shaking with adrenaline, while Mara, who'd ridden up with the rescue party, sat beside her and talked her through it. First time's always the worst, Mara was saying. Gets easier, not easy, but easier. I almost shot, right when they surrounded us. I had a clear shot at one of them. Emma's voice trembled. I couldn't do it, couldn't pull the trigger. That's good. That means you're not a killer. Mara squeezed her shoulder. Your father's teaching was about defense, not murder. You'll know when the moment's right to pull that trigger. Today wasn't it. Ethan watched them from across the yard, something warm and painful unfolding in his chest. His daughter and his... What was Mara to him? Partner wasn't enough. Lover didn't cover it. The woman he loved, he supposed. The woman he'd been too afraid to say it to. Anderson finished with the wounded man and walked over. He's talking. Says Jack Keller's been planning this for months, obsessed with revenge. Apparently losing the ranch wasn't enough. He wanted blood. Is he gone for good this time? Hard to say. But he's down 5 men, and we've got 1 to testify. I can get territorial warrants issued. Make him wanted across 3 territories. Anderson looked satisfied. Even if he's not gone forever, he'll think twice about coming back here. That's all I can ask. After everyone left, After the wounded man was hauled to town and the dead ones buried in unmarked graves, after Rachel and Emma had gone inside to rest, Ethan found Mara standing at the edge of the clearing, looking out at the mountains. "You didn't have to come," he said, joining her. "Yes, I did. Couldn't let you face them alone." "I wouldn't have been alone. Had Emma and Rachel." "You know what I mean." She turned to face him. "When I heard they were planning an attack, I didn't think. Just grabbed a rifle and rode. Didn't matter that I could have been killed. Only mattered that you needed help." "Mara, let me finish." She took a breath. "I told Emma I love you, last week when she asked. Seemed stupid to lie to her, but I should have told you first." Ethan's heart was pounding. "Why didn't you?" "Because I was scared. Because love means risking everything, and I've spent most of my life learning not to risk anything." She met his eyes. "But I'm tired of being scared, tired of holding back. So here it is. I love you, Ethan Crow. You're stubborn and damaged and emotionally constipated, but I love you anyway." "That's the second time you've called me emotionally constipated." "Because it's true." She smiled slightly. "Feel free to argue the point." It's accurate." He reached out, pulled her close. "I love you too. Have for weeks, maybe months. Couldn't figure out how to say it. You're saying it now, that's enough." They kissed, and it felt different than before. Felt like a promise, like a commitment, like the beginning of something real instead of just the continuation of survival. When they pulled apart, Emma was watching from the porch. She didn't say anything, just smiled and went back inside, giving them privacy, giving her blessing in her own way. The summer passed in strange domesticity. Emma stayed for an additional 2 weeks, reluctant to leave now that she'd found her father again. Rachel stayed too, her husband having telegraphed that he trusted her judgment. The cabin filled with voices and laughter and the occasional argument. Emma and Mara formed an unlikely friendship, bonding over books and their mutual exasperation with Ethan's stubbornness. Rachel and Sarah Mitchell became close, talking about starting a women's auxiliary for the town. Ethan found himself surrounded by powerful women with opinions and discovered he didn't mind it as much as he'd expected. When Emma finally had to leave for school, she hugged Ethan tight. "I'll come back next summer," she promised, "and I'll write every week. Real letters, not the stilted things I used to send." "I'll write back," Ethan promised, "every week." "Good." She pulled back, looked at him seriously. "Don't let Mara get away. She's too good for you, but she loves you anyway." "That's rare." "I know." "Then do something about it, properly." Emma's eyes gleamed. "I want to come back to a wedding next summer." After Emma left, Ethan thought about her words, about weddings and commitment and making things official, about whether he was ready for that much permanence after so much loss. It was Mara who brought it up first, one Sunday afternoon at the cabin. "The town's talking again," she said. They were on the porch, watching the September sky turn colors. "About us living in sin, setting a bad example for the children." "Let them talk." "I'd rather not." She took his hand. Emma asked if we were getting married. So did Sarah. So did half the town council. And I didn't know what to tell them, because we've never actually discussed it. She turned to face him. "Do you want to marry me, Ethan Crow? Not because the town expects it or because it's proper, because you want to, because you can't imagine the rest of your life without me in it." Ethan thought about all the reasons to say no, about how marriage hadn't protected Caroline, about how promises could be broken and love could die, about how he'd sworn never to risk that kind of loss again. Then he thought about Mara, her strength, her stubbornness, her refusal to let him hide, about how she'd saved him as much as he'd saved her, about how the cabin felt wrong when she wasn't in it and right when she was. "Yes," he said, "I want to marry you." "Why?" "Because you make me want to live instead of just survive. Because you see all my broken pieces and don't try to fix them. Because I love you and I'm tired of being afraid of what that means." Mara smiled and it transformed her face. "Good answer. Is that a yes?" "That's definitely a yes." They were married in October when the aspens had turned gold and the air carried the first hint of winter. The ceremony was held in the new town square, with Anderson officiating and the entire town in attendance. Sarah Mitchell cried. Tom Breslin made a speech about second chances that was surprisingly eloquent. Emma sent a telegram of congratulations. Mara wore a simple dress that Sarah had helped her make, pale blue with white lace. Ethan wore his cleanest shirt and actually combed his hair. The ceremony lasted 10 minutes. The kiss lasted considerably longer, to the town's mixed amusement and scandal. The reception was held at the Silver Dollar Saloon, transformed for the occasion into something almost respectable. The whole town turned out, even people who'd whispered about Mara months ago, who'd called her trash and worse. They came, they drank, they danced, they celebrated. "Look at you," Tom said, handing Ethan a whiskey. "Married, respectable, part of the community. Never thought I'd see the day." Neither did I. Ethan watched Mara dance with Sarah, laughing at something. "Still not sure it's real." "It's real, and it's good. You've earned this, Ethan. After everything you've been through, you've earned happiness." "To second chances," Ethan said, raising his glass. "To second chances," Tom echoed, "and new beginnings." They stayed at the cabin that night, their first night as husband and wife. Mara had already moved most of her things up from town. They decided she'd split time between teaching and the cabin, working out a schedule that let her do both. "No regrets?" Ethan asked as they lay in bed, firelight dancing on the ceiling. "About marrying you?"
None. She turned to face him. "About anything else? Plenty. But not this." "What kind of regrets?" "The usual. Things I should have said to people who are gone. Choices I made out of fear instead of courage. Years I wasted hiding." She traced patterns on his chest. "But those regrets made me who I am. Led me here. So maybe they weren't really mistakes after all." "You don't believe that?" "No," she admitted, "but it sounds nice." Deck. They made love slowly, tenderly, like they were learning each other all over again. Like the vows had changed something fundamental between them. Afterward, Mara fell asleep curled against him, one hand over his heart. Ethan lay awake, listening to her breathe, thinking about the past year, about the woman in the alley he'd almost walked past, about every choice that had led to this moment. 15 years he'd spent alone, 15 years of grief and isolation and slow death by inches. And then one day, one choice, one woman, and everything changed. He wasn't fixed. Probably never would be. The scars from losing Caroline and leaving Emma would never fully heal. The guilt would always be there, lurking in the quiet moments. But he was alive again, really alive, and that was enough. The years that followed weren't perfect. Nothing ever was. The Kellers sent threatening letters for a while, though they never returned in person. Anderson eventually tracked them to California and saw to it that warrants followed them wherever they went. The threat never entirely disappeared, but it faded to background noise. Ethan's leg never fully healed. It ached in cold weather and sometimes gave out without warning. Some mornings he woke up barely able to walk, but he adapted, learned new ways to move, accepted his limitations without letting them define him. Mara taught for 10 years, shaping a generation of children who grew up knowing a woman could be strong and smart and refused to break. Her students adored her, feared her too, but mainly adored her. She became a fixture of the community, respected and valued for more than just being Ethan Crow's wife. Emma visited every summer, sometimes staying for weeks. She brought friends, then a suitor, then a husband. Eventually, she brought children of her own, Ethan's grandchildren, who ran wild through the cabin and called him Grandpa Ethan in voices that made his heart ache with joy. The cabin filled with life, with voices and laughter and the occasional argument, with Emma's family and Mara's students and townspeople who came for advice or help or just company. The silence Ethan had cultivated for 15 years was shattered beyond repair, and he found he didn't miss it. He and Mara had 2 children of their own, a daughter they named Caroline, born 2 years after the wedding, a son they named Thomas, after Tom Breslin, who'd become like a brother to Ethan. Neither pregnancy was easy. Mara was older than ideal for first-time motherhood, and both deliveries were difficult. Ethan relived Caroline's death both times, pacing and praying to deities he didn't believe in, certain he was about to lose everything again. But Mara survived, both times. Came through exhausted and in pain but alive, with babies that screamed and demanded and filled the cabin with new kinds of chaos. "You're not getting rid of me that easily," she told him after Caroline's birth, when he'd finally stopped shaking. "I've survived worse than childbirth.
On Ethan's 60th birthday, the cabin was full of people. Emma and her family had come from Denver, Tom and Sarah from town, Anderson, now retired from sheriffing but still keeping a weather eye on trouble. Mara's former students, now grown with families of their own. The cabin groaned under the weight of humanity. Ethan stepped outside for air, overwhelmed by the noise and motion. Mara found him on the porch, looking out at the valley. "You okay?" she asked, joining him. "Just needed quiet. There's a lot of people in there." "There are. All of them here because they love you." She wrapped her arm around his waist. "When did that happen? When did the hermit become the center of a community?" "I have no idea." He pulled her close. "Wasn't part of the plan." "What was the plan?" "Live alone. Die alone. Try not to hurt anyone in between. How's that working out?" "Terribly. Complete failure." He kissed the top of her head. "Best failure of my life." They stood there for a while, watching the sun set over the mountains. Behind them, the cabin was full of noise, children shrieking, adults laughing, someone attempting to play Caroline's old piano badly. Life in all its messy, chaotic glory. "Do you ever think about her?" Mara asked quietly. "Your first Caroline?" "Every day. She's part of me, always will be." "Does it hurt? Still?" "Yes. But it's a different hurt now. Less sharp. More like an old friend you're glad to see, even though seeing them reminds you of everything you lost." "Do you wish—" She stopped, seemed to reconsider. "Never mind." "What?" "Do you wish it had been different? That she'd lived? That you'd never left? That none of this had happened?" She gestured at the cabin, at the life they'd built. "Do you wish you could go back?" Ethan thought about it, really thought about it, giving the question the respect it deserved. "No," he said finally. "I wish she'd lived. I wish Emma had grown up with her mother. I wish a lot of things had been different. But I don't wish away what we have. This life, this family, you, I wouldn't trade it for anything. Even though you had to lose everything to find it? Even though." He turned to face her fully. "You saved me, Mara. Didn't just pull me out of isolation. You saved my life." "We saved each other," she corrected. "That's what we do. That's what we've always done." Inside, someone called for Ethan. Time to cut the cake, make a speech, endure more attention than he was comfortable with. He sighed. "Ready to go back in?" Mara asked. "No, but let's do it anyway." They walked back into the noise together, hand in hand. Into the life they'd built from nothing. Into the community that had grown around them. Into the love they'd found in the last place either of them expected. Emma caught his eye from across the room and smiled. Little Caroline, 8 now, was trying to teach her younger brother how to play cards, with limited success. Tom was arguing good-naturedly with Anderson about something. Sarah was organizing the chaos with the efficiency of long practice. This was his life now, loud and messy and full of people who demanded things from him, who loved him despite his failings, who'd stood with him when trouble came and celebrated with him in moments of joy. 15 years ago, he'd been a man waiting to die. Now he was a man surrounded by reasons to live. That night, after everyone had left or gone to sleep, Ethan sat by the fire with Mara. She'd fallen asleep with her head on his shoulder, breathing softly. He should wake her, get her to bed properly. But he didn't want to move. Didn't want to disturb this perfect moment of peace. He thought about the letter he'd received from Emma last week. She was pregnant again. Her 3rd child. She'd asked if Ethan would come to Denver for the birth, be there to meet his newest grandchild right away instead of waiting months. He'd said yes without hesitation. Would leave Mara in charge of the cabin and make the journey east. Would stand by his daughter's side through the fear and pain and joy of new life. Would be the father she deserved, even if it came 20 years too late. He thought about Mara's school, now flourishing with 2 teachers. The town council had hired an assistant for her, recognizing that one person couldn't handle the growing number of students. Black Hollow Ridge was thriving, new businesses, new families, new possibilities. He thought about young Caroline and Thomas, asleep upstairs, dreaming whatever dreams children dream. His children. His and Mara's. A future he'd never dared imagine. Outside, the mountain stood eternal and indifferent. Winter was coming again. He could smell it in the air, feel it in his bad leg. They'd need to stock more firewood, check the barn one more time, prepare for months of cold. But inside the cabin, warmth reigned. Love and life and laughter had driven out the ghosts. The man who'd spent 15 years in isolation now couldn't remember what isolation felt like. Mara stirred against him, murmured something unintelligible, settled back into sleep. Ethan held her close, breathed in the scent of her hair, and allowed himself to feel grateful. For second chances. For stubborn women who refused to break. For daughters who were willing to forgive. For communities that stood together when it mattered. For love found in the last place he'd expected. For all of it. Ethan Crow had chosen silence once, had buried himself in the mountains and waited for the end. But then he'd chosen differently, chosen to step into that alley, to help a stranger, to care again despite the risk. And that one choice had changed everything. He looked at his sleeping wife, thought about his children and grandchildren, about the life that filled every corner of this cabin. Not perfect, not painless, but real, and worth fighting for. He'd spent 15 years running from his past. The rest of his life, he'd spend building a future. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.